about the conflict with China, including Golwan in 21, we were doing that. By the way, Chinese economy is going to grow by 5%, which means that approximately, I made an estimate, it's an $18 trillion economy. Going by 5% would be almost 4 times that of our 6.5% growth. We have to be careful of that. But I did not hear a word in the budget. Only Atmanirbhar, big talk, all kinds of nice talk. But where is it that we can substantively show a path?
Mr. Kant, do you want to take on that point about the Atmanirbharta point that Dr. Mitra is making? And also, I mean, I'm just trying to take off on a larger point from there, that there is a concern that India's exports are also hit at the moment. The global economy is facing these headwinds, the depreciation of the rupee, high inflation. How do we deal with all those factors as we look to increase growth?
So let me first respond to Mr. Mitra on that point, because we are in a globalized economy. Our exports grew last year overall. In fact, they grew in a big way. There is an import intensity to exports. You are an integral part of global value chains. If you do not import, you can't export many products. You've seen our mobile manufacturing exports have grown enormously, but they have an import component. Different parts of a mobile are manufactured in different parts of the world. And same thing with capital goods, etc. To my mind, it's not the essential imports which are a worry. The issue is about non-essential imports which should be manufactured in India. And I think the government has taken a series of measures, both through tariff and through production-linked incentive schemes to drive manufacturing in India. Much of this result you will start seeing, as you are seeing in electronic and mobile manufacturing, you will start seeing in many other areas of growth in due course. The other question that you asked me was about headwinds across the world, etc. Yes, there are headwinds. But every crisis, to my mind, is an opportunity. What the budget has done is, despite several crises in the world, is to look at opportunities, that this is the time to do energy transition, this is a time to go for green hydrogen, this is a time to really to push digitalization in the economy, which India has done. There's been enormous breakthroughs. We do about 11x fast digital payments compared to 11x more than what Europe and America does. We do 4x more than China. These are huge achievements. India should be proud about these achievements.
Dr. Mitra, are you being unnecessarily pessimistic? I take the point that you're saying about the need to look after those who are the most needy. But each of the points that Amitabh speaks about, whether it's digitization of the economy, the transition to a green economy, specific areas of excellence, for example, the IT services sector, right? Are these not things that you should be, praising?
No. I'll give you an example, practical example. TCS, Tata Consulting Service, #1 IT company in India, is employing right now in West Bengal 55,000 people in Kolkata. People don't know that. Number two, I was very saddened when I heard the MSME question. What probably people do not know is small and medium enterprise lending is done at the state level banking committees, of which I chair that. We are #1 in India in terms of MSME lending from the state level. I was also very unhappy that the budget talked about SHG, self-help groups of women, 98% women who pay back very well. When our government came to office, there were 1 lakh SHGs.
No, but Dr. Mitra, respectfully, you aren't answering my question. Dr. Mitra, respectfully, and I'm sure you've got lots of points you're making, but what Amitabh Kant speaks about, whether it is that green transition, whether it is digitization, and all those other data points, aren't these aspects of the budget that we need to be praising irrespective of political or party affiliation?
Let me submit to you that budget has many components to it, and who can disagree that we need a hydrogen economy? Which person will disagree? Question is one of prioritization. It's a zero-sum game. You have 100 rupees. You have to allocate it in a balanced manner. All I'm saying is, you do Keynesian stimulation, macroeconomics 101, parallelly, you do massive amount of investment process, which will take time. You have a balance in that. What I find this budget is a rah-rah budget, which says we'll do this, which is represented very well by Mr. Kant and his conversation today. I'm saying let's go to the grassroots level, balance the process.
Okay.
Yes, we need to do transition. By the way, you will need $4 trillion a year for the transition in the world, according to, conservatively speaking, per year. So transition is not something that will happen just
All right,
like
Dr.
that.
Kant, would you like to, last comment from you, respond to that. Do we have that 4 trillion to make?
No, Vishnu,
Yes.
Vishnu, what grassroots transformation are we talking about? I was a small part of the aspirational district program where we transformed 112 districts where West Bengal did not even participate. And today, the budget has announced the 500 aspirational blocks, which is a hardcore grassroots transformational program. Now, this budget is not political. This budget is not populist. It's a transformational budget. It makes a paradigm shift in our growth strategy. It's a budget for building a new India of tomorrow.
All right.
I think I must say that, these are very nice conversations. I would suggest to Mr. Kant, go and get elected, understand the grassroots level, because that gives you a real feel. And what that'll do for you is perhaps this conversation will become a little different. My submission today is balance the process. Immediate, you need 5 crore people, 50 lakh people to be saved from the terrible situation.
Okay, gentlemen, let's leave it over there. I don't think Amitabh has any intention of being elected. I think he works at a different level.
Vishnu,
I'm sure he
Vishnu,
can.
you can play a role in the development of a country in different ways.
Right. No, I accept that point. I don't think you necessarily have to be elected. And I suspect that Dr. Mitra would accept that point as well. But thank you, gentlemen.
And I think it's an unfair comment to be made.
Okay. All right. Let's leave it over there, gentlemen. Thank you so much. And I think it's been a wonderful sort of conversation over there, looking at various aspects of models of development. Joining us now, Nilkant Mishra and Nilesh Shah. Thank you both very much for being with us. Mr. Nilkant Mishra, let's look at one of the big aspects of this, the big capex jump. Do you believe that A, it's the right thing to be done at this stage of our economy? B, is it going to generate the jobs that we so desperately need?
No, absolutely. So if you think about the macroeconomic context, the debt to GDP, because of all the interventions during COVID, the slowdown in GDP has been very elevated. It needs to be brought down. But if you bring it down, if you do very aggressive fiscal consolidation, it will slow the economy down and can potentially put you into a debt spiral. So you need to keep spending. What is remarkable about this budget is that all the savings from the food subsidy, from the fertilizer subsidy, and I was listening to the previous debate on Manrega. Yeah. Manrega is a demand-driven scheme. I think it is a mistake to think that there is low allocation. I think the assumption is there will be less demand for Manrega. So allocating that extra resource into Capex is, I think, the right thing to do to keep aggregate demand supported. So when we talk about Keynesian stimulus, it's not just about throwing money. It is about creating aggregate demand. I think that the Capex numbers will support not just near-term demand by the fact that they will need construction and a lot of spend on the ground, but they also create scope for future growth. They bring down logistics costs. They bring down energy costs, improve energy self-sufficiency. And those, I think, are far more important. So if you build a road, remote parts of India become accessible. There are a lot of job creation that can happen there, manufacturing there for global demand. So no, I do think that this is an excellent use of resources, which are actually quite limited given how elevated our debt to GDP is.
Nilesh Shah, one of the big aspects of this entire budget was the process of digitalization. Linking DigiLocker, which is now going to be much more a part of our lives, with PAN and Aadhaar, new apps, really expanding on apps for 5G, taking that digital backbone as the basis of future economic growth. How is a lot of what we are talking about in the years ahead, say 5, 6, 7 years from now, going to be very much the basis of economic growth in our country?
So one, we all know that technology is future. Yesterday, what was an engineering product, a motor car, in tomorrow's world is going to be a digital product with a lot of software installed into it. Now, DigiLocker and digitization are going to help us in few ways. One, it will improve our productivity. I'm sure, Vishnu, you would have also gone to bank for your KYC. You would have gone to multiple KYC for dealing in shares, brokers, demat account, and so on and so forth. We can all reduce that wastage of time if there is digitization in showing our documents. Similarly, today, a small businessman spends a lot of time in filing documents. They file same documents to multiple government agencies, and we wonder why can't government agencies share the document among themselves? There is a proposal
hold
in the
that
budget.
thought, Mr. Shah. Just hold that thought. We've got Ashwini Vaishnav, the IT and Railway Minister, with us. Thanks, Mr. Vaishnav, very much for being with us today. We were talking about digitalization. I think you're the best person to actually talk about that. The cynics would say that the more you try and link, for example, DigiLocker with PAN and Aadhaar, it is a way in which you try and expand your tax net. It's a lot more than that, right?
Absolutely, Vishnu, and as Mr. Shah was very rightly explaining, this helps, this really brings out a huge ease of living in people's lives. We have all faced the problems, and see, it's not just me saying. You go to any international forum, the world today recognizes India's digital stack as a very unique thing that Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has developed over the last 8 years. It has made a significant transformative change in every citizen's life. The payment system, the health system, CoWIN, each of these stacks are today at population scale and solutions which many of the developed countries don't have that kind of solution. Real-time payment, real-time settlement, imagine at a scale that we are doing, it's not there in any other country, right?
Right.
That's what is actually driving this digitization scheme. Yes, it will bring lots and lots of people into formal economy, and that's a very desirable goal. That's good for the country, that's good for the society. And yes, it will bring a lot of ease in people's life.
I just wanted to ask you, it all sounds fantastic. And, if you look at some of the details, for example, digital payments, which have shown a 76% increase in transactions in 2022. But then you've got the opposition, which is making a couple of points that this budget is futuristic in a sense, which is not which is a good thing, but has enough been done to deal with inequality, has enough been done to deal with hunger and unemployment. So if you look at the overall budget, have we missed out on a lot more in terms of social spends?
I'm really surprised if the opposition is saying this. During COVID, when the whole world was reeling under huge, tremendous uncertainties, it was Prime Minister Narendra Modi who ensured that 800 million people get right time, they get the food grains, they get all the facilities, they get free vaccination, and people who would have otherwise gone into abysmal poverty are today in good condition. It's Prime Minister Narendra Modi who got Jan Dhan accounts for 40 crore people. It's Prime Minister Narendra Modi who got the Ujjwala scheme where the village households got gas connection. Isn't that inclusive growth? If that is not inclusive growth, then what else would be inclusive growth?
Yeah.
It is Prime Minister Narendra Modi who's giving Har Ghar Nal Se Jal to crores and crores of families. Imagine the kind of inclusiveness that a tap, I was born in a village, I can understand what is the need for water. Imagine the power of getting a tap water connection in your household, in a village. It's phenomenal. Imagine the power of Ayushman Bharat, which prevents people from getting back into poverty if a disease happens in the family. If this is not inclusive growth, then what else is? See, this opposition with its great economists and great people, they brought India to a situation because of their policy paralysis that India became one of the fragile 5 economies when UPA was in power.
Right.
It is Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji who has, over the last 8 years, brought that fragile 5 category to India is a bright spot, India is the growth engine for the global economy, that kind of situation despite the global headwinds.
Yeah.
That's what, Vishnu, the reality is.
Mr. Vaishnav, there are global concerns, and this is another point that's been mentioned, that we don't know when the war in Ukraine is going to end. That's just what there are a couple of global economies, big ones, heading into a recession. And these are factors which can actually impact us going forward. Are we completely insulated from those threats, those dangers?
Nobody is ever insulated completely from any global situation. That's a reality. What can we do different so that the global reality doesn't hit us that bad? That's what, if you see, Honorable Prime Ministers clearly thought through initiative of increasing capital investment since 2021 budget from 3.5, he brought it to 5.5 trillion rupees, 5.5 trillion rupees to 7.5 trillion rupees, 7.5 to 10 trillion rupees. Look at the math of this. 10 trillion rupees capital investment basically means in the economy it has an impact of 35 trillion rupees, 35 lakh crore rupees, right?
Right.
60% of this goes to the small and medium sector, right? Imagine 18 trillion rupees going into the small and medium sector, MSME sector. Each 1 crore investment creates about 4 employment in the country. So this 10 trillion rupee investment is going to create roughly, if you compute, more than 1 crore and 20 lakh employment in the country if you look at the multiplier and all of the factors together. This is something which is very important, and this approach is what has saved India from facing the similar situations which the Western economies are today facing.
Sure.
And with today's budget, India will outperform all major economies by a large margin.
Okay. I just wanted to get, I'm also joined at this stage by Shashi Tharoor. And, Mr. Tharoor, the point that's been mentioned, for example, by Rahul Gandhi, the point that's been mentioned is that, look, there is a problem as far as this budget is concerned, that not enough has been done as far as employment is concerned, not enough has been done in terms of equality is concerned. But then there's the parallel, the opposite vision, I should say, which Ashwini Vaishnav, for example, was trying to talk about, saying that, look, these are the various schemes which we have had. We have had tap water provided to so many homes. There have been so many toilets which have been provided. We have this massive Capex program, and therefore that will result in employment. Look at the entire digitization strategy going forward. Look at the future of that. That brings so many more people into the economy. So when the Congress party criticizes this budget, are you just doing it for a political standpoint? I mean, what are you basing it on?
Vishnu, the fact is some of these things have been happening for the last couple of years. Capex has gone up every year for the last 3 years. Digitization has been in progress since before the COVID pandemic, since demonetization it's been talked about. And yet, unfortunately, it's made no dent in our unemployment figures. We have record levels of unemployment. And what is more alarming for anyone, I'm sure Ashwini Vaishnav would agree with me, is the extraordinary level of youth unemployment. Those between 15 to 29 years of age are now at 16% unemployment in our country amongst those looking for work. And in my state of Kerala, it's 40%. Mm-hmm. And it really does worry me when young people don't find work, because they can also constitute a bigger sort of danger to society if we can't absorb their productive energies. On top of that, we've got exactly this, the very things the government is talking about with pride are potential problems. Capex, it's been pointed out by Mr. Chidambaram in his press conference today that the government didn't spend 22,000 crores of their Capex money last year. Can they now add another 2.5 lakh crores and spend it? It remains to be seen. The government has a record in the last 8 years of announcing targets it fails to fulfill. And we're going to have to see if they can actually, not just draw a goal, but kick the ball into it. And that remains to be seen as well. The other concern that many of us have, you didn't ask it specifically, but it's worth mentioning, is where the priorities are. I'm glad that Ashwini Vaishnav's railways have got the money they've got. I'm glad that we've seen significant increases in infrastructure spending. But what's been cut? You've seen a massive cut in women and child development. You've seen a cut in integrated child development. You're seeing a cut in the Ministry of Minority Affairs. You're seeing a cut in the Ministry of Labour Affairs. And most shocking of all, you're seeing a record low figure for Manrega, which has been slashed to 60,000 crores. Now, Manrega is a demand-driven project. The demand has gone up 21% since before the pandemic. And last year, the finance minister actually came back to Parliament to ask for supplementary demands because the much higher sum that they had raised in last year's budget did not prove enough to meet the demand.
Right.
Now, when they've actually had to raise the money that they allotted last year, how on earth can they lower the money?
Let me just put that across. Lots of points there, Shashi. Let me put that across to Mr. Vaishnav. Number one, Capex has gone up, but then will you be able to spend all the money which you have allotted? Number two, on the issue of priorities, Shashi Tharoor speaks about unemployment, specifically youth unemployment, as it exists now.
If you look at the last 3 years, Capex targets have been achieved, significantly achieved, and very good quality work is there. This quality work is today increasing India's productivity, improving India's logistics, improving India's, it's providing that much needed boost to manufacturing because of these improvements. I'm very confident that the targets which have been put in the budget, those targets have been met in the past. This year they will be, this year also they will be met. Regarding employment, I would like to very clearly point out this entire strategy over the last 3 years has brought so much more employment into the system compared to many other economies. If you look at the Provident Fund data, the number of new joinees minus the people who are leaving Provident Fund plus people who are rejoining. So the net of this, the net new employment generated is of the order of 1.5 million every month, 15 lakh every month. Yes, because of COVID, there is a slack which has to be picked up, but rapid progress after COVID has really helped us, the entire society, in generating more employment. And this strategy which is there, best of the economists, if you ask them, they all say, yes, this is the right strategy. The strategy which was propagated by some economists connected to the Congress party, especially Mr. Raghuram Rajan, that was a strategy which has failed in other countries. It has created havoc in terms of very high inflation levels of 8% in US, a country where even 2% inflation was considered very high.
Right.
So the whole of Europe is reeling under 7 to 10% inflation rates. That's the policy which many of the economists who are friends of Mr. Tharoor were advocating, whereas our Prime Minister took a very conscious choice, very focused consumption, very focused investment, and that strategy is helping us come out of the COVID pandemic in a very significantly stronger way.
All right, Mr. Vaishnav, I think you need to leave at this stage. But Shashi, the point even in the economic survey was recovery complete. I mean, that's how they titled it. So they moved beyond the pandemic. They say that they now need real growth, and this is how they see it needs to be done.
No, look, they're entitled to their strategy, but a couple of things have to be said on what he said. First of all, even on Capex, as the state governments are pointing out, a lot of the Capex is basically conversion of what used to be grants to the states into loans, into interest-free loans, sure enough, but they're basically That's what's right. As the Tamil Nadu finance minister has pointed out, you've converted grants to loans, revenue spending to capital investment, and that's how you're able to show a dramatic increase in capex. It's playing with numbers to a great extent. And what is more, as I said, GDP growth in and of itself doesn't actually guarantee an increase in employment figures. So we've seen that there was a time in the past where 1% of GDP growth will generate a couple of lakhs of jobs. That's no longer true. We're seeing a lot of jobless growth. And even if inflation, according to Ashwini, has been relatively curbed, and we're all relatively happy about that, the fact is it has not been curbed in a very price-sensitive nation like ours, where the Aam Aadmi finds himself unable to afford his normal diet and his normal expenditure patterns because of the extent to which these have gone up in the marketplace. So we really cannot afford to celebrate all of this. I think the big picture numbers, the broad strategy are understood. I still have quarrels about some of the things. Agriculture has gone down.
So your problem is essentially the focus and the priorities, right? Because if you look at the 10 key budget takeaways and the numbers that they've backed them with, a lot of it is pretty impressive. Growth in gross tax revenue, 10.44% projected. GST target for 2023-2024 up 11.95% to 9.6 lakh crores. The fiscal deficit, they're projecting at 5. I could go on and on, 5.9%. Capex.
Vishnu, how about interest rates? We are paying 20 rupees out of every 100 gained in tax. We're paying just servicing our debts in terms of interest.
Right.
And interest rates are not only high, but they're going higher in the Western world as they grapple with the recession. So it's not going to be that easy to actually maintain some of those numbers when it comes to fiscal deficit projections, because our interest burden is actually going to be rising and not falling this year.
In fact, even if you look at subsidies, and this is something which the Congress party has spoken about, food subsidies, for example, the subsidy for financial year 2024, 1.97 lakh crores, it's actually gone up according to them. So when you say that you aren't focusing on the poor or social sector spending, this is one statistic which they say is, it seems to suggest that they are working in the right direction.
No, I think we're seeing some money going into the PMKAY, which is the old National Food Security allocation, yes. But everything else, unfortunately, is down. Social welfare and social security spending have actually been cut across the board. Even PM Kisan, the Prime Minister's favorite scheme, has gone down from 68,000 to 60,000 crores. Agriculture is down from 83,500 to 76,000 crores. So there are cuts everywhere in order to finance this big mega capital spending budget. I hope the strategy works, because as an Indian, I want my country to succeed. I'd like us to see prosperity follow. But I do worry at the moment that the people who are the most vulnerable are the ones the government seems to have ignored in their announcements today.
All right, Shashi Tharoor, thanks very much for joining us and sharing your concerns at this budget. Also recognizing a couple of those numbers and statistics and what they're aimed at doing. But thanks very much for sharing your concerns as well. We're going to take a look at one of the aspects of the budget which concerns all of us. Let's take a look at, for example, the tax slabs, the new tax regime, which has been backed completely. Let's go across to my colleague Priyanshi for more on that.
Well, Vishnu, there have been several announcements for the common people, for the taxpayers, in terms of the taxes that they pay for their income. Now, the tax slab has been increased. The tax exemption limit has been increased from 5 lakh earlier to 7 lakh now. So earlier, under the new tax regime, people below the income of 5 lakh rupees did not have to pay any income tax. But now that limit has been increased to 7 lakh rupees. So people below the income of 7 lakh rupees do not have to pay any income tax. This was being anticipated and expected by the taxpayers for the last few years, as there had been no increase, no change in tax rates for the last 4 years, ever since the year 2018. Now, how does this really impact you? Along with the increase in the exemption limit, there has also been change in the tax slabs under the new tax regime. Earlier, there were 7 tax slabs under the new tax regime. Now they've been reduced to 5 tax slabs. Let's just explain to you with examples how this really changes the taxation for for you and how this could even save you some money under the new tax regime. If your income is 7 lakh rupees, of course, you don't have to pay any income tax as the exemption limit has been increased. If your income is 10 lakh rupees, under the new tax regime earlier, before the budget, you had to pay an income tax rate that was 23,400 rupees higher than what you'll be needed to pay now. Now you'll pay 54,600 rupees. So you save 23,400 rupees. Now, if your income is 50 lakh rupees, then you pay an income tax of 12.32 lakh rupees, which is a saving of 54,600 rupees from your previous, from the previous tax regime. If you have an income of 6 crore rupees, then you save 20.87 lakh crore rupees. So this is how this works. But why is the saving really coming up? First, let's just explain to you how the taxation really works. If you have an income of 9 lakh rupees, then your first 3 lakh rupees get taxed at 5% according to the new tax regime that has been proposed by the finance minister today. So first 3 lakhs get taxed at 5%, which is of course 15%. Your next 3 lakhs, which is 3 to 6 lakh rupees, that bracket gets taxed at 10% according to the new tax regime. So that's 30,000 rupees. So 15,000 plus 30,000 rupees, that's how you get an income tax of 45,000 rupees on an income of 9 lakh rupees. So if for 0 to 3 lakh rupees, you don't pay any tax. For 3 to 6 lakh rupees, you pay a tax of 15,000 at 5%. For 6 to 9 lakh rupees, you pay a tax of 30,000 at 10%. So your overall tax is 45,000 according to the new tax regime proposed by the finance minister. But the existing new tax regime would have made the total at 60,000 rupees. So you're actually saving 15,000 rupees under the new proposed tax regime that has been proposed in the budget today. So as you can see, 9 lakh rupees had 3 slabs, 3 lakhs each, 0 to 3 lakhs, no tax, 3 to 6 lakhs, 15,000, and 3 to 6 lakh, 10% tax at 30,000 according to the new tax regime. So that's why you say 15,000 according to the new tax regime, and this has been done to promote the new tax regime, as there were few takers for this ever since it was announced in the year 2020. So that has come as a relief for the taxpayers in the budget this morning.
Well, there was a big focus, as you can imagine, on where the markets were. Sakshi's been tracking the markets when the budget was being announced by the finance minister. It went up 200 up, 300 up. It went up to more than 1,000 up. And then it really tanked. So run us through the day at the markets.
That's right, Vishnu. It really was a volatile day of trade for the markets today. And of course, we saw, like you said, the Sensex swinging by from those 1,000 points higher, over 1,000 points higher, to, of course, closing marginally in the green and red. So it really was a volatile day of trade for the benchmark indices, closing mixed. While the Nifty ended the day marginally in the red, we saw the Sensex ending marginally in the green. So, of course, sectorally also, it was a mixed picture, with PSU banks and metals being the worst hit. In stock-specific action, though, we saw the fact that the Adani Enterprises and Adani Ports stocks dragged the Nifty lower. And remember, Adani Enterprises and Adani Ports are not part of the Sensex. Therefore, investors witnessed this rare instance of divergence in the Sensex and the Nifty. Apart from this, of course, market-linked debentures being taxed at a marginal rate also dampened sentiment, as experts believe wealth managers may now be hit hard. So really a volatile day of trade, and of course more to watch out on how markets react post the budget come tomorrow.
All right, Sakshi, thanks very much. Well, one of the ministers we did speak to earlier on, primarily about what the budget has to say on the IT sector, is Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Here are a few excerpts of that interview. You know, we've spoken when we met last time so much about digitalization, and I think we see so much of that effort continue in the budget. For example, the entire effort at enhancing DigiLocker, extending it to or mating PAN, DigiLocker, Aadhaar. What exactly is the goal in terms of ease of business, in terms of what the government seeks to do? Is it just to draw in potentially more people into the tax net, or is it basically about ease for millions of people across the country?
No, Vishnu, it's not. There is an absolutely clear objective. We want to make it easy. As you know that millions and crores of Indians have the digital ID, the Aadhaar ID, and we have an Aadhaar identity authentication platform that is working very well to ensure that the identity of the beneficiary is the real beneficiary. So that has worked very well. We have then subsequently, as you know, built the India stack with multiple layers and multiple different applications, which include UPI, DigiLocker, CoWIN, etc. And the India stack is something that is now expanding and growing. And as you heard in the budget, artificial intelligence also will be part of the functionality and the capability within the India stack. Now, the idea here is that just like we have multiple identities for citizens and corporates constantly complain about the need for having different identities. You have PAN for some sort of services and some sort of public registration, and then there are other identities that they have to use. So we have now said, look, we will just standardize that the identity of the corporate will be linked to his or her PAN, as the case may be, and that will be just a simple way for corporates to identify themselves as they navigate through an increasingly digitalizing government ecosystem and the government stack.
Okay. The scope of services in DigiLocker will be expanded. How?
Look, I think the DigiLocker is becoming increasingly the go-to
Absolutely. Indispensable.
Cloud. Yeah, personal cloud. And as the number of public services and the number of digital public infrastructure and digital public services expand, and they're only going to expand as the Prime Minister and the budget signals that the digitalization of government is only going to accelerate, and more services, more and more what the citizen wants, and a framework of trust and governance that the budget clearly outlines is going to be achieved by more and more of these services, ranging from e-courts to the other extreme. So the DigiLocker is really the personal cloud, if you want to call it that, for every Indian citizen, where he and she can store data, documents, and use the DigiLocker in turn for any kind of authentication, any kind of document sharing, any kind of verification between services or between government departments or indeed the private sector as well.
Another interesting steps is e-courts, and the finance minister has put an outlay of 7,000 crores, phase 3 of e-courts. How would this make legal dealings much easier? What is the ultimate goal of e-courts?
Look, I think the broad objective is really that the world's oldest democracy and the world's greatest democracy deserves the world's greatest digital justice system. And the many other arguments that are out there to expedite pendency. There are large numbers of cases that are held up. And so it is clear during COVID that the digital technologies, using of digital technologies in the justice system has helped people considerably address the issue of pendency. So the framework or the architecture of the e-courts has been finalized. It is something that is being driven by the Supreme Court committee. The government and the NIC and the MeitY have worked closely with the Ministry of Law and Justice to create a framework where almost every stakeholder who is a stakeholder of the justice system can navigate the justice system in the future using this new revamped next-gen e-courts that was alluded to in the budget.
All right, well, it's certainly been a long day. We've tried to bring you every aspect of the budget. We've brought you the top industrialists we've brought you the Confederation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, CII as well. We've got you people from across the country, their reactions to the budget. We've tried to analyze it. There's a lot more that we'll continue to do. But for the moment, from all of us here, good night.
Co-powered by.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The News with Sonia Singh, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Shom, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV, only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 22 years old, but it is young at 22.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The News with Sonia Singh, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Shom, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV, only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 22 years old, but it is young at 22.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story. India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Show, Monday to Thursday.
Hello, good evening and welcome to NDTV. A long day of discussion over the budget 2023. Crucial budget for the Modi government, just a year ahead of the big election in 2024. Is it a balanced budget? Does it have something for everybody? We've been speaking about it throughout the day. We'll try and decode it further at 10 p.m. here on NDTV. Let's start with the headlines. I'm Ankit Tyagi. India's big middle class budget focus on growth, major changes in personal income tax slabs, Capex expenditure up by 33% to 10 lakh crores. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails the budget, says first budget of Amrit Kal for New India. Prime Minister also says major focus on growth, middle class and poor. Major income tax changes announced today. Annual income of 7 lakh rupees. No need to pay any income tax as per the new tax regime. Opposition hits out at the Modi government over the budget. Rahul Gandhi says it is mitrakal budget, no vision for jobs and mehengai. Mamata Banerjee, Aam Aadmi Party also attack budget 2023. Through the day, you have heard the industry captains talking about the budget, experts trying to simplify it for you. But as politicians, of course, there have been both people praising it from the treasury benches and the opposition poking holes as far as the Narendra Modi budget, the last full budget of the Modi government 2.0 is concerned. So first, let's take a look at the politics which is going on over the budget 2023.
माननीय वित्त मंत्री श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमन.
Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presenting her fifth budget, the last full budget of the BJP government before the 2024 general elections. While the ruling party described the budget as a foundation for building a developed India, the opposition called it a budget for elections, lacking any vision.
अमृत काल का ये पहला बजट विकसित भारत के विराट संकल्प को पूरा करने के लिए एक मजबूत नींव का निर्माण करेगा. वंचितों को वरीयता देता है. ये बजट आज की एस्पिरेशनल सोसाइटी, गांव, गरीब, किसान, मध्यम वर्ग, सभी के सपनों को पूरा करेगा. मध्यम वर्ग को सशक्त बनाने के लिए हमारी सरकार ने बीते वर्षों में अनेकों निर्णय लिए और ईज ऑफ लिविंग किया है. हमने टैक्स रेट को कम किया है, साथ ही प्रोसेस को सिंप्लीफाई, ट्रांसपेरेंट और फास्ट किया है.
Sir, any expectations from budget, sir?
Rahul Gandhi, back in parliament after his Bharat Jodo Yatra, tweeted to say the government has no real roadmap for the future. At a press conference earlier, the Congress had hit out at the government, saying the budget showed how far the government was removed from real issues.
The FM has not mentioned the words unemployment, poverty, inequality or equity anywhere in her speech. Mercifully, she has mentioned the word poor twice in her speech.
Besides the Congress, other opposition leaders too have criticized the budget.
আজকে যে বাজেট করেছে গরিব লোকদের বিরুদ্ধে বাজেট কে আমি ধিক্কার জানাই এবং ধিক্কার জানাই ওদের চিন্তাধারায় এই বাজেটে কোনো আলো নেই শুধু অন্ধকার
गरीब भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारे बच्चों के लिए रोजगार के माध्यम बनाएं गरीब भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारे हाथ में रोजगार दीजिए हम मेहनत करके अपने पैसे कमाएंगे हमें ये हमेशा के लिए जो काल में शुरू हुआ जिंदगी भर के लिए नहीं चाहिए और अपनी कमियां छुपा रहे हैं
We have seen it in the last 9 years. Wherever they announce an airport, they will only announce it in a poll-bound state. They will either announce it in a BJP government state. Forget about airports, brother. They have announced that they are going to give 10 lakh crore for the infrastructure. Right? Which infrastructure are you talking about?
But the BJP called the budget a visionary one. Party President JP Nadda said it would empower the poor and the middle class.
आम बजट 2023-24 एक लोक कल्याणकारी बजट है यह गांव, गरीब, किसानों, आदिवासियों, दलितों, पिछड़ों, शोषितों, वंचितों, आर्थिक रूप से पिछड़े तथा मध्यम वर्ग के लोगों को सशक्त और सक्षम बनाने वाला बजट है.
With Arvind Gunashekar, Bureau Report, NDTV.
All right, we'll have, in fact, a full panel of experts to talk more about the budget, the hits and misses as far as the budget 2023 is concerned. But before that, let's go across to Dr. Subhash Sarkar, Union Minister of State for Education, Government of India. So thank you for joining us on NDTV. I would like to start by asking you, in fact, the education sector budget this year has been highest. With 1.12 lakh crore rupees. It has been increased by about 8%. If you could tell our viewers, where will this extra money go? What is the plan and the road ahead as far as the education sector is concerned?
Yes, this is the highest budget since independence in our education ministry. In spite of doing so much work in last year, and the last few years also, in the 8 years, there's so many institutions have been established. Everything, 11.7 crore household toilets, 220 crore COVID vaccination, 47.8 crore PM Jandan Bank. After doing all these things, till our country is in 5th number position. And this budget will give us for the higher institutions, even for the internationalization of institutions, 50 Institute of Eminence will be prepared for artificial intelligence and robotics. This will make our India, that is, make artificial intelligence in India and make artificial intelligence work for India. And the good number of youth people force will be skilled for AI and robotics, and that force will be our youth force to supply all over the world also. And at the same time, our higher education, that already more than 300 universities have been set up in the last year. And that's you have come to know from our presidential speech. And with this also, with this amount of fund, higher institutions and the school education, both will be benefited. Even in the midday meal, the fund has been increased, and in IIT, NIT, and IIIT, everywhere the fund has become increased. But you will be happy to know that 157 nursing colleges being developed by this, and at the same time, जो district institute of educational training that was having no work previously, and that has been forced by, that has been given by significant amount of money to work
but Dr.
more
Sarkar,
to development
a lot of
the
educationists
development of
and
the
also
skill
a
of
lot of young
teachers.
people have been talking about the fact that, yes, of course, there has been increase as far as the allocation is concerned, but one concern for them of is with supplementing the infrastructure for education about the new professors, teachers across board, because there has been seen a lot of vacancies as far as professors and teachers are concerned, even in premier institutes.
Yes, our work is being done, and already it has already been started, that in mission mode to recruit the teachers. And you will be happy to know that 38,800 teachers will be recruited in Ekalabya model residential school. This is very important factor. And at the same time, many more recruitment will be, and many more stipend. 47 lakh students will get stipend for their skillful training. This is a very important thing. And they will be skilled for placement, and that will give job to the young people.
I just want to just,
and at the same time...
Right, sir, I just want to just extend that point that you are talking about the 47 lakh youths in 3 years, a direct benefit transfer scheme, the national apprenticeship scheme that you are talking about. How will it be rolled out, and how exactly, will people get employed after coming in under this scheme?
Definitely, because you already know there is the highest budget have been given to the railway, 2.40 lakh crore, and even the infrastructure, it is about 10 lakh crore. At the same time, the capital infrastructure, the effective capital expenditure, 13.7 lakh crore has been allotted.
Right.
And this huge amount of money, when it will be expenditure will be done, then huge amount of employable opportunity will come.
Okay.
And for that reason, skilled person is required, and that skilled person is also being made by this 47 lakh apprentice training, and they will get stipend by direct benefit transfer.
Okay, in the end, I also want to understand from you that the end goal, largely people see getting good education. The end goal, of course, is to seek better employment opportunities. In this entire budget, that was something, the word unemployment or new employment opportunities was something that a lot of people have pointed out was missing. What is your view? How will these employment opportunities be created, and how do you think, with the new allocation and with the new focus, the new education policy as well, how does that change the game for the youth as far as this country is concerned to get more employment?
New education policy, in our new education policy, our institute have been under the academia and industry collaboration has already been done. And in our academia, there is a post of professor of practice. From industry, the persons are coming to the academia, and from academics will go to the industry. Naturally, our students, they will be trained up for the requirement of the industry.
Right.
Naturally, our all prepared students, they will be eligible to work in the industry, in the agriculture, and everywhere. We will train our students not only reading and writing, but also with the practical training for the industry, for the agriculture, and all kinds of works in the society.
So thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us and giving us a sense of how the Education Ministry now plans to take forward this budget allocation, the increase in the budget allocation for the education sector. Thank you for speaking to NDTV. Let me now go across, in fact, and introduce our panel this evening. We have Niranjan Hiranandani, Vice Chairman of Manrega. We also have Meenakshi, Niranjan Hiranandani as well. Okay, and we also have Rajat Sethi. He's the advisor to Manipur Chief Minister, economist, political analyst. He's joining us at this moment. We have Nilesh Shah, member of PMAC, also joining us at this moment. He's the Group President and Managing Director of Kotak Mahindra AMC. We will also go across to K. Rahman Khan, former Deputy Chairman, Rajya Sabha and Senior Congress leader. I want to start, Mr. Shashi Panja, Cabinet Minister, West Bengal, is also joining us at this moment. Mr. Panja, I want to start with you. And the first question that I want to ask you, sir, Mamata Banerjee and, of course, Mr. Amit Mitra, the Finance Minister, have come out and, ma'am, they've been very, very vociferous as far as the opposition to the budget is concerned. In fact, Mamata Banerjee went on to say that there is nothing for the poor and the marginalized as far as this budget goes. The government says, and the Prime Minister himself underlined, that this is Sabka budget. It is for middle class and it is an important step, an outlining step as far as the government's forward-looking vision is concerned.
Thank you for having me and thank you for the correction. This is Dr. Panja here.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just wanted to say, in fact, Dr. Subhash Sarkar was speaking, and probably he's not there now in the show. This was the same government. I'm just catching on to that once I needed to speak, that this is the same government which spoke about 2 crore jobs a year, and which is now melted down to 10 lakh jobs per year. So you were talking about filling up posts, in the various educational institutes. It should be done. But this is the very government which could not keep that promise. And that's why we stand with such a high unemployment index. Similarly, there is vacancies in the government, all the government posts. Even that was not spoken about in the budget today as to how those would be filled up. Rather, there was no tangible, mention of job creation, etc. Now, having said that, vis-a-vis your question, what our leader, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, mentioned right away, that this appeared to be more of an opportunistic budget rather than a futuristic budget.
Okay.
And obviously, there is a eye on the elections, the forthcoming elections, and also on the 24 elections. And the point is, we are still worried about unemployment. We are still worried about inflation. And we are still, I have in the panel lots of captains of the industry too. We are actually also worried about the private investment, which has gone down.
Okay.
The private consumption has gone down. The exports have gone down. Obviously, the only thing the government should have and has also done is, of course, allocating that much for the Capex, for infrastructure development. That is what it should be doing, and that is what it has been. What has been done.
Right.
But why? What about the other pillars which have not worked out?
Okay.
Third, I feel that budget statements in the past. Not suddenly. This government is also working since 2014.
Right.
The union government. It's the
Right.
same government. Why so long? And that is why we say, what took you so long to make these announcements for the middle class? But anyway, all said and done, we'll come back. But I think the rural Manrega scheme, which is an employment guarantee scheme,
Yes.
has been deprived of again. It has been deprived.
Okay.
And also
I want
the
to take a
daily wage earners
response.
and
I want to
others.
take a response on that. Mr. R. Gandhi is also joining us. He's the former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, so welcome as well. But Rajat, I want to get your response from you as far as these the opposition, in fact, specific charges that the opposition is making. I just want to add, Sitaram Yechuri, in fact, said when the unemployment rate is historic high, the budget reduces Manrega allocation by 33%, food security has been cut by 90,000 crore, fertilizer subsidy by 50,000 crore, and petroleum subsidy by 6,900 crores. Now, the opposition is saying that it's just not enough for the government to come and label it as a middle-class, poor-friendly budget. What they have done and the subsidies that they have reduced tell a different story.
Well, Ankit, I respectfully disagree here. Fertilizer subsidy or the petroleum subsidy is dependent on the input cost of the petroleum on the crude oil, and that is how it is governed globally. So I don't go by the amount of subsidy alone as a marker of government cutting the social sector spending. That's point number one. Point number two, around Manrega. Manrega has always been a demand-driven scheme We've seen when the demand went up last year, primarily because of workers going back to the villages, and government thought that this was the best way to sort of support them during the COVID time. The allocation went up by a staggering 30%. Now it is back to that same old trajectory of Manrega allocation through the budget, and there is no surprises in that. So I think the previous year when it went up surprisingly by 30%, that was a blip, and it should not be seen as a normal course. So I think the politicians should not hoodwink the public into believing a narrative that they want to spin out, and instead come out with their own constructive criticism to the budget. Respected Honorable Cabinet Minister of West Bengal is here with us. I would be very eager to understand what kind of a budgetary sort of innovation has the West Bengal government come up with so far. Has there been any points for the central government to copy from the West Bengal growth model? And happily the government should do that.
But Rajat, you were talking about
request...
Manrega as a demand, based as far as the scheme is concerned and the allocation is concerned. You're right, in 2021, it went on to a historic high because, of course, the pandemic had hit home. Then, of course, since then, there has been a decrease every year. But pre-COVID, in 2019-20 as well, right now, the government has reduced it to even less than pre-COVID levels. And that at a time when rural unemployment has also grown.
Well, I think the bulk of the rise has been in the previous financial year, especially during the COVID times. And thereafter, 60,000 crore is still the current allocation. And I personally feel that how the government has thought about it is that they want to ensure that, if the labor force is moving to the urban sector, it needs to be compensated through jobs which are capital oriented. And therefore, the capital expenditure, be it the investment pipeline that the government has or through the railways. There are a bunch of jobs which will be created in various locations, and it would compensate for the loss of rural jobs that can be attributed to the Manrega.
All right. In fact, let me also at this moment go across to Mr. Rahman Khan. Sir, Rahul Gandhi has come out and said that this is not an Amritkal budget, this is a mitrakal budget that the government is talking about. Is Mr. Gandhi making a political statement? Because the government seems to suggest that not only has this been, like everybody was expecting it to be in an election year, a very populist budget where the government just opens its coffers and goes on a massive spending spree, the government has tried to balance it. It has given something to the middle class, something to the poor, and also, in fact, not spook the market as much.
See, the budget, in my view, is hyped budget because there is nothing much substantial for the middle class and the poorer sections of the society, except some assessment. Just now we are talking about Manrega. Manrega, as you rightly said, it is a demand-driven this thing. There is a demand. The government is not coming out how much demand is there. And also they have not fulfilled, there is only, according to the economic survey, only 45 days employment was provided, even where there is Manrega is given. Manrega is one of the main thing to provide employment in the rural area, which has not been completed.
Okay.
The government is only citing the allocation, but they are not saying how much percentage of the allocation has increased from previous year or previous budget. They very coolly say we have 10 lakh crore, 5 lakh crore we have allocated for. They have to allocate because of the size of the budget. The size of the budget is not the same as what it was 10 years back. And what is important is we should look into the percentage of budget of the total budget is there, because there is nothing on that basis. If you go into look into this budget, the allocations for the various programs is not according to the size of the budget. Okay. And also regarding the unemployment, there's nothing mentioned about unemployment, how they are going to tackle. Right. They said they have more allocation, but the economic survey says that they have not spent the allocated budget in the previous year. We are hardly 1 month left in the 22-23 budget. but there they have not spent almost more than 20% of the allocated budget in various things. So how do we expect that the capital expenditure?
That's a very important point that you're making, sir. And Niranjan Hiranandani, I just want to understand from you, sir. The government says that there has been a massive increase capex outlay as well, which the people, those who are cheering for this budget, seems to suggest that this is going to, in a way, propel the growth. I mean, infrastructure will bring more jobs, and that will have a cascading impact, a positive cascading impact as far as the economy is concerned.
I think I am fully with the fact that the high investment in the infrastructure is going to give and leapfrog this entire economy. So infrastructure, housing is going to be a leapfrog, which is essential at this point of time, because otherwise the capex that we wanted to attain for the $5 billion target is not going to happen. So all this which we are talking about is an essential part of the overall plan. But having said that, if we want ultimately GDP to grow beyond 7.2%, which is ultimately the objective of the government, infrastructure and housing has to be a part of it. If you look at what China did when it attained 10% GDP growth plus, it was only because of housing and infrastructure. Today, because their infrastructure is more or less complete, because they don't require much housing, and that has been slowed down, their GDP growth is also down. Of course, their overall economy is 5 times India's, and we need a long time before we can catch up. But the infrastructure development, both in terms of roads, railways, airports, and others, is absolutely essential. There is a second point to it, which is more important about infrastructure, which was probably missed out by the finance minister to mention. Logistics cost in India is almost 13%, which means every item which is transported in India, 13% becomes the cost of transport. While in China, it is less than 6% to 7%. Now, if we can improve the infrastructure and reduce the cost, we will be able to increase GDP of India by 2% simply because of an improvement in logistics and a reduction in the transport and logistics cost of India.
Right.
So this is an important factor which does. And the third factor which becomes important in infrastructure is employment. If you look at housing, if you look at infrastructure, whether it's road, ports or airports, the employment factor is very high. Manufacturing today does not employ as many people. Earlier in manufacturing industry, there was very little automation, so employment. So today, whatever we have spent on infrastructure is very, very, very important. And I'm glad that this size of infrastructure development is done. They have doubled it in 3 years. I think it will go even further. And that could be the base for leapfrogging India. Otherwise, you will become like Pakistan and Sri Lanka, where nothing like this has been done.
Right. Mr. Gandhi, I just want to quote the former finance minister, P. Chidambaram, to you, who said that the government is determined to push the new tax regime for which there are a few takers for a variety of reasons. Besides making the new tax regime, the default option is grossly unfair and will rob ordinary taxpayer of meager social security that they have in the old tax scheme. Isn't this a big worry, sir? And how do you, because there is a massive debate right now going on as far as the new tax slabs and the regime is concerned versus the old one?
Yeah, the new tax regime will be more efficient. That's why the government has given extra incentives in this budget for people to shift towards a new tax regime. Still, the option is still available in the hands of the taxpayer to opt for old regime also. So because new tax regime, there are a lot of rebates and discounts kind of thing will not be permissible. It will be more tax efficient. So that's why they have crafted to encourage the taxpayers to move on to the new tax regime. And that is certainly most welcome, because by efficiency in tax, is a very important criterion for the overall tax rate to come down in the years to come. And in the recent years, in this budget also it is announced how far the new tax regime or their tax efficiency has improved in terms of the time taken for assessment. And when more and more people will opt for or automatically be shifted to the new tax regime, the efficiency improvements the country will enjoy.
Okay. Mr. Shah and Mr. Nilesh Shah, the big picture as far as this budget seems to be suggesting is that, the focus is on growth through higher productive capital spending. Do you believe that this is going to spur not only just, this is going to encourage people to spend more, the growth will also bring in a lot of jobs in the market? Because at this moment, let's agree that, jobs and unemployment is a big worrying factor as far as not only the youth are concerned, but economy on the whole, sir.
In 1980, India was equal to China in per capita GDP. In 1947, we were ahead of Japan. In 1960, we were ahead of South Korea. Today, all these countries are way ahead of us. We missed opportunities, and all those countries went and captured. Now, if you want to reduce unemployment, there are few models available in India. The states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Telangana have unemployment ranging between 2.3% to 4%. If rest of India also follows these states, then certainly unemployment problem can be resolved. If we look at investments, this budget has increased allocation to investment. But outside of budget also, we have to improve the ease of doing business. And it is not the responsibility of just central government. The state and the local government also has to come together to support investment. Today, we have opportunity of China +1 as well as Europe +1. What we did in mobile handsets, where we were importing 90% of mobile consumed in India in 2014, to where we are producing 90% of mobiles used in India in 2022. We have to replicate across all the sectors. Then growth will happen, employment will be created, and per capita income will hopefully reach one day to South Korea, Japan, and China level.
Okay. Dr. Panja, you said, and I was just going through what Mamata Banerjee had said, that this is an election budget. But the government has largely, not gone overboard in terms of populist measures. I mean, the government has not gone overboard in giving a lot of sops as far, which usually we see before an election year. Why is it that the TMC thinks that this budget is an election budget when the government, rather than in fact, opening up its coffers, has tried to balance this with growth and, of course, other opportunities?
No, they could have done what they did this year. They could have done it earlier. Is that what we are trying to say?
But then it's a catch-22 for the government. If they do it today, then you say they should have done it earlier.
No, they didn't do it earlier. This is one point which you have to accept. I must appreciate the diagram that you are showing that we can see on the screens, and that is very important. So we need not be very ecstatic about things. Just look at India's public debt is high because 34% is from borrowing and other liabilities. Let us appreciate that. We are not in a very good state that way. And thus 20% of our expenditure is for interest repayments. This is a very important diagram that you are showing. Secondly, I believe that the government of India should appreciate the concept of cooperative federalism. So, vis-a-vis, just going back to Manrega, what's wrong with the rural employment guarantee scheme? Nothing. But if you don't send funds in time, or the funds are inadequate, there is a delay in wages, that's when things get affected, and that's where the cooperative federalism also is disturbed. Thirdly, what I would like to say is, in comparison, education budget going down by 2.5%. There's a dichotomy here because there are various panels that we have joined in various channels. So the government, in one end says education and health is something that the state governments have to look into. There is another set. You just spoke with Dr. Sarkar, and there was no mention that education is to be a state subject. He was reveling in the basking in the glory. But there has been it's down by 2.5%. Health down by 2.2%. Manrega, of course, down. Even for that matter, even the PM Kisan is down. Child budget is down by 2.5%. Digital India, digital cuts has also been down. So I'm not saying you were mentioning about the populist thing. Just look at the publicity around Vande Bharat. We are not against anything. The railway budget itself has got subsumed into the union budget. What was wrong in having a separate railway budget? So railway budget, there is only one line which says 2.4 lakh crore is the capital outlay. What is the further breakup? What is it? Is it that you're allotting because you have not allotted in the past? So now you're trying to, it's long overdue. So track and station maintenance, purchase, production of bogies, wagon and locos, etc. What is it?
But overall,
why is there no breakup?
Up, ma'am.
No, why is there no breakup? We need and explain. I mean, railway recruitment has stopped. So railway jobs, what happens to that? We need a breakup. So
Mr. Laman, is that also some, a view as far as the opposition is concerned that you need to go through the finer details, the finer prints to understand exactly what the final outcome of this budget is? And if that is, of course, the assumption, then shouldn't the opposition also wait for that final outcome before coming out and opposing the budget for the sake of politics?
So, yes, there should be a finer details to understand the budget, no doubt about it. But overall understanding of the budget is they are going to have increased the capital expenditure. But the question which is agitating some of us is that you don't at the end of the year that you don't spend the amount, but what is allocated, and by that to balance the budget, you are not. How do you? Because the past in the previous years also the budget allocated has not been spent. If you don't spend at the end of the day whatever is allocated from the budget, how do you increase the infrastructure? How do you ultimately it is the expenditure has to be done, which you practically they don't do it.
Right.
They don't allocated budget is not done, and they are resorted to heavy borrowing. And interest is, as rightly said, 20% of the total outgo is for interest purposes. So the total national debt has enormously increased. How are you going to? Because it is all right to allocate some funds, and then, as I said earlier, you have to tell in the percentage basis, because the total volume of the budget will go normally every year. It is not because of the government. The total value of the budget goes. Total size of the economy goes.
Mr. Niranjan Hirandani, a lot of people and experts across the globe are talking about three important factors which which are on the horizon as far as the world economy is concerned. Of course, the growth in the world trade has slowed down significantly, and it's expected to slow down further in 2023-24. Then many advanced economies are expected or are on the brink of entering recession. And then, of course, the global security situation, which is also impacting the stability, whether it's Russia-Ukraine war, and of course, the impact on the oil prices as well. Does this budget insulate India if all these three, the three sort of scenarios do play out together in the year 23-24?
The answer is yes and no. Yes, because we are integrated with the entire universe now, and we have a great amount of trade with all countries, including China. So we are integrated with the rest of the world, and obviously the recession which takes place in Europe, in the Western countries, does affect our exports and other aspects to it. On the other hand, Russia-Ukraine war also affects our position because of the price rise in the oil, which has taken place. So that's the second factor. But the third factor, which is very important and which I think the budget has really taken care of, is in two parts. Number one, that they are focused on the internal development, which is much more. So whether it is manufacturing, whether it's the PLI scheme, the focus on housing, the focusing on internal infrastructure development, so that we are able to generate actually goods and these products into the country. To the extent to which we export, there is going to be a come down. There is no doubt about it, and we have factored that into the budget, but I don't know whether it's going to become worse or better. One thing which has been positive with the Modi government, which I must compliment them, is the geopolitical management of the West and the East. On one hand, we've been able to shake hands with the West, and at the same time, we have been able to buy oil from Russia at a much lower price. We have saved 35,000 crores in the last 6 months by buying oil from Russia rather than from the open market situation. So the answer is yes, we are affected. We are definitely cannot insulate ourselves. That's why our GDP growth is 7%. If the world economy comes back to normal, I think we could work hard and go to a double-digit growth of economy. But until that doesn't happen, and we don't know what the future is of the Russian-Ukraine war and the recessionary trends of the Western countries and the interest rate hike, which is there in the foreign countries. I think these 4 factors will be the factors which will run the economy for the next year.
Dr. Banja, you wanted to make an intervention there.
Now, I just wanted to say that if you study the last financial year, because we want to not speak about COVID. So COVID has made an impact. Russia, Ukraine has made an impact. But if you just study the last quarter, from the first to the last, you will see that the growth rate has actually decreased. The growth rate has decreased. In the last quarter, it will be around about 4%. So the government needs to explain. On the other hand, there's been high GST collections. Leave alone the fact that the devolution of taxes or the funds which should be actually sent back to the states, and we are one of them, we stand still deprived because we never get them on time. So that also has to be borne in mind, that it's good to compare with other countries, but then comparing with others who have different GDPs, then we would mistake, like saying that we are the 5th largest economy, but compare with the other. But the others have different GDPs. For their 2% growth and our 7% growth probably would match. So to compare, it's somehow we need to come out with the facts. That's what I wanted to say.
There are, of course,
we need to be very clear.
With the GST numbers, there are also, of course, a few experts who are suggesting that this year may not be as big for the GST collection as the last year has been. So all those factors will have to be taken in account when the government, in fact, proposes or outlays the entire budget. But I'll have to, in fact, thank all of you right now because there is a breaking news which is coming in. Thank you so much to all my guests for joining us on this discussion. In fact, important breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, coming in at this moment. The Adani group has called off the FPO. This is day after it was fully subscribed. The FPO has been called off. In fact, what we know is that the FPO has been called off considering the market volatility, and this is what the latest, in fact, which is coming in. There were some red flags which were raised and questions also as far as the SEBI is concerned. My colleague Priyanshi joining us at this moment. Priyanshi, what does this mean, first of all? Because when we saw it was, the entire FPO was, people were talking about it was overbooked.
Right, Ankit. It was over. It was subscribed fully. Yesterday was the last day, and today was the first trading day for Adani stocks after that FPO was fully subscribed. And now the Adani Group has called off the follow-on public offer, and they've said that this has been called off considering market volatility, and they've actually called it an unprecedented market day today in the trading session. And this means that the money that investors put in the Adani Enterprises follow-on public offer, that will now be refunded. And the Adani Group said that we have called off the follow-on public offer to protect investors from potential financial losses. And they say that since the market is currently highly volatile and there's an unprecedented situation that we're seeing in the markets right now, that's why we aim to protect investors' interests, and that is why we've called off this follow-on public offer. Now, this was important because, as we've mentioned, that there were questions after the Hindenburg report. The Adani FPO did get fully subscribed, so there were questions, but now it has been called off. It was a 20,000 crore follow-on public offer, which was India's largest ever, might I add. And the Adani Group said that going ahead with the FPO will not be morally correct amid these extraordinary circumstances that we are seeing currently. So those are the statements from the Adani press release.
Yes.
They also add that our current financial conditions are stable, and they say that we are confident of sailing through. If I give you the exact numbers of this, they say that our balance sheet is very healthy and our strong cash flows and secure assets, and we have an impeccable track record of servicing our debt. And they say this decision will not have any impact on our existing operations and future plans as well. But it comes at a time when, Ankit, of course, the Adani stocks really tanked in the market today. Adani Enterprises, in fact, lost 26%. Adani Ports was down 17%. Adani Total Gas was down 10%. Green Energy was down 5.2%. Adani Power was down 5%, hitting lower circuit. Adani Wilmar was down 5%. Transmission was down 0.8%. So all of these 7 Adani stocks that were mentioned in the Hindenburg report alleging stock manipulation, all those stocks majorly lost at the markets today.
So does this also mean that the Adani Group is going to return the money to the investors?
Absolutely, Ankit. All those retail investors, the institutional investors, whoever invested money in this follow-on public offer, they'll be returned their money. That's what the press release also says. And as I mentioned, that they say that we are returning this money because the market conditions are currently really volatile, and we want to protect our investors from any potential financial losses. So that's what the Adani press release says. But of course, as we've mentioned, that it comes after all of those questions that were raised on the FPO, considering the Hindenburg report that came out, and that has led to this complete tanking of the Adani stocks. Just in the last few trading sessions, $92 billion have been wiped out from Adani Group stocks ever since the Hindenburg report came out. After that, this FPO really came at that time, and the Adani Group also mentioned that the Hindenburg report is timed with the FPO to impact that, but Hindenburg hit back at that, saying that their questions are valid and the Adani Group has not answered their questions. So amid all of that row, the FPO did sail through, get fully subscribed, but now it has been called off considering the market volatility. That's what the Adani Group says.
Very, very important, in fact, news report coming in there, breaking news, in fact, coming in there. And we would also, before we slip into a break, like to tell our viewers that NDTV is a subsidiary of the Adani Group, in full disclosure. Thank you so much. We'll just slip into a short break. News and updates continue. Coming back with much more.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV. Only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love. You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 22 years old, but it is young at 22.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Show, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV, only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate
Budget 2023 came at a time when there are recession fears for the world and when many industries had a tough time last year. Few of those industries were the startup sector and specifically the tech sector with multiple layoffs and losses, many stocks tanking as well. So let's just get a sense of what Budget 2023 has in store for the startup sector and for the edtech sector, and who better than Byju's to talk about it. We have the India's largest edtech firm Byju's joining us on Budget 2023. We will speak to them about the impact. We have Divya now joining us, who is the co-founder of Byju. Divya, you come from a company that lies at the intersection really of tech, education and entrepreneurship. First, let's focus on the tech industry. Last year was a bad year for the tech industry. There were layoffs, losses, even Byju's announced laying off 2,500 people. So were there expectations to get a boost from the budget, and have they been met, or has the budget been silent on the tech industry?
So Priyanshi, maybe I want to just start by talking about the overall budget, and then we can specifically talk about tech and education, because it's all very intertwined, right, if you look at it. What I found really impressive by the successive budgets is that each budget is built foundation set up by the previous budget. So there's no drastic announcement here, and that actually projects a sense of stability and predictability from India to the world. So there's certain key themes, right, in each budget, which that India remains not just on the right economic growth path right now, but India is also getting ready today for India at 100. So if I just have to broadly divide it, the themes are infrastructure, digitalization, skill development, ease of doing business, and inclusive growth, right? These five. And put these themes, right, built on these themes, and there's also this additional flavor of consumption-driven growth. Now, that's become necessary due to the current adverse global economic environment. So we have twin engines of growth happening here: growth through consumption boost, infrastructure-led growth. So, and like you rightly said, there are tax benefits to the Indian middle class, very welcome. Most of all, the increase in exemption from 5 to 7 lakh. So what is it puts more power in the hands of the consumer, and that actually benefits the tech industry. So the Honorable Finance Minister estimates that the total revenue foregone is INR 35,000 crores. But this effectively means that 35,000 crores will now be additionally injected into the economy in 23-24. And as the world prepares for maybe another year of slowdown, it's going to go a long way, this amount, in boosting the Indian economy and giving it a strong consumption push. And if you look at what does tech company do, it solves problems at scale, right? So that's where it will actually, help consumers invest back into things and places which will, probably help them in their future, like education.
So you seem really optimistic about the budget, given that the tech industry was one of the worst sufferers last year. But you also come from the edtech space. So let's talk about education now. The budget allocation this year is the highest ever for the education sector at 1.12 lakh crore. It also focuses on AI. Now, how could this bring changes to the sector, according to you?
Yeah, with 1.12 lakh crores, it's actually the highest ever allocation. And with visionary policies like Make AI in India, Make AI work for, is actually laying strong foundations for India to lead in the technologies of the future, right? And I'm immensely excited about the launch of PM Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0, which will train millions of Indian youth in new age technologies like AI, robotics, and mechatronics. So India's demographic dividend is something that we were very, very proud of. Now we're also reaping it by investing so much in upskilling. So on one hand, consumption push and infrastructure, and on the other hand, the massive investment in skill development will make India ready for the jobs of tomorrow.
Right. So now let's talk about startups, of course. Several announcements have been made on that front. How do you think that will help the sector at a time when there are so many startup failure stories and so many startups laying off so many employees? As I mentioned, Byju's also laid off thousands of employees. So how do you think the budget announcements for the startup sector are seen?
Yes, in fact, I think the place to start up today is in India. And the whole concept of making in India, for India and for the rest of the world, because we are one of those few bright spots in the entire globe that can actually drive up the economy of the country and also boost what's happening in the entire world, right? So the Honorable Prime Minister's vision is fructifying for both Startup India and Digital India. And I can say that we, the entrepreneurs of India, are now ready to play our small roles in the great story of India. India rising to claim its global leadership role. So, we're living and working in the most exciting times. By the end of this decade, we'll be reaping the benefits of our investment in infrastructure and digitalization. And India today is actually getting ready for its future leadership role by reaping the huge demographic dividend that it possesses. So I think that's where the core lies. Wonderful that we are hosting the G20 summit this year. So there's no better country than India to lead the world in both growth and stability in these turbulent times.
Right. So as an entrepreneur, do you welcome the budget completely? Are you completely happy with it? Or are there no complaints?
See, the point is what you should be able to envision a future and to be fortunate. If you're fortunate to be in a country which is growing like this, India is a story of self-sufficiency in a challenged world. And I think that is the biggest opportunity that we have as Indians, as startup founders, as entrepreneurs, and we have to reap that.
All right, Divya Gokulna, thanks very much for joining us and getting us that perspective. She, of course, welcomes the budget for the startup sector and for the tech industry, given those hard times that the industry saw last year. With that, it's time for a very short break, but news will continue on the other side. Stay tuned.
Co-powered by...
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Show, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV. Only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 22 years old, but it is young at 22.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope.
Nirmala Sitharaman presents her fifth budget. India's big middle class budget focus on the growth as well. Major changes in personal income tax slabs. Capex expenditure up by 33% to 10 lakh crores. Budget 2023 with eyes on Mission 24. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails the first budget of Amrit Kal for New India. The Prime Minister also says major focus on growth, middle class and poor. Major income tax changes announced today in the budget. Annual income of 7 lakh rupees. No need to pay taxes on that. Meanwhile, the opposition hits out at the Modi government over the budget. Rahul Gandhi says this is mitrakal budget, no vision for jobs and Mangai. Mamata Banerjee and Aam Aadmi Party's Arvind Kejriwal also hit out at budget 2023. Adani FPO called off one day after it was fully subscribed. In fact, Adani FPO has been called off considering market volatility. Adani Enterprise will refund the FPO money to investors. India records biggest win in T20 cricket history by 168 runs in the final T20 against New Zealand. Shubnam Gill strikes an unbeaten 126 as India wins the series 2-1. All right, starting with an important story this evening. Adani Group has called off its follow-on public offer. In fact, the FPO has been called off a day after it was fully subscribed. The FPO was called off considering the market volatility. That's what the Adani Group has said. The Adani Enterprise is all set to refund the FPO money to investors. Let me quickly go across to my colleague Priyanshi, who is joining us with more details on this. Priyanshi, now there was in fact a lot of chatter around this FPO, and now finally the Adani Group in fact has come out and said that they are going to return the money. They are going to in fact refund the money to the investors and have also called off the FPO. What does this mean?
Absolutely, Ankit, as you mentioned that there was a lot of chatter around the FPO because it came at a time when the Hindenburg Research Group had released a report alleging serious stock manipulation in the Adani Group, which of course the Adani Group had refuted. So the FPO really came at that interesting time, and the FPO did get fully subscribed despite those allegations and despite that entire controversy. But now the follow-on public offer has been called off. Remember, this follow-on public offer was announced by the Adani Group, and in fact it was India's biggest ever at 20,000 crore rupees. And it was supposed to help the Adani Group with their debt payments and also with their expansion plans. But now that has been called off, meaning the 20,000 crore rupees that the Adani Group received from investors, from retail investors, institutional investors, all of that will now be refunded. Now, why has this really been done? The Adani Group says that we've done this to protect our investors' interests and to protect our investors from potential financial losses. They say that market volatility has been unprecedented today. In the trading session, markets have been really volatile for the past few days after, of course, that Hindenburg report came out. We saw that the markets have been volatile for the Adani stocks, and they say that because of that market volatility and the stocks performance recently, we don't want our investors to face any financial losses, and that's why we've called off the follow-on public offer. What's really a follow-on public offer for somebody who might be new to this? These are additional shares that are issued. It's different from an IPO. So if investors would have gotten these shares, and if the shares would have tanked further, then that could have led to further financial losses for the investors. So that's why the Adani Group says that it's not morally correct to go ahead with the FPO at a time when the market volatility continues. Let's just tell you how bad the market situation was for the Adani stocks today. The Adani Enterprises stocks, the Adani Ports and Energy stocks all tanked today. The 7 stocks that were mentioned in the Hindenburg report, all of them tanked in this trading session. As you can see on your screen, Adani Enterprises lost 26% of its value. Adani Ports lost 17%. Adani Total Gas was down 10%. Adani Green Energy was down 5.2%. Power was down 5%. So was Wilmar, and Adani Transmission was down 0.08% as well. So Adani stocks had really lost billions of their valuation for the last few trading sessions. In fact, they lost 92 billion of their valuation. So it's amid all of that market volatility that the follow-on public offer has been called off. The money will be refunded to all those who have invested.
Right, and as Priyanshi was telling us, in fact, Adani Group has said that this is not morally correct at this moment to go on with the FPO. Thank you, Priyanshi, for joining us. Just to complete disclosure as far as the Adani Group is concerned, NDTV is a subsidiary of the Adani Group. All right, now, in fact, moving on to the big budget that was presented by Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, today. As soon as the budget got over, while the government, the Prime Minister and the ministers in the union government, the Treasury benches, hailed the budget for the poor, for the middle class. They said that there is something for everyone. Meanwhile, the opposition took on the Modi government and said that this budget has done nothing as far as unemployment is concerned. And of course, with the spending cuts in Manrega, they also called it anti-poor.
माननीय वित्त मंत्री श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण.
Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presenting her 5th budget, the last full budget of the BJP government before the 2024 general elections. While the ruling party described the budget as a foundation for building a developed India, the opposition called it a budget for elections, lacking any vision.
अमृत काल का ये पहला बजट विकसित भारत के विराट संकल्प को पूरा करने के लिए एक मजबूत नींव का निर्माण करेगा. ये बजट वंचितों को वरीयता देता है. ये बजट आज की एस्पिरेशनल सोसाइटी, गांव, गरीब, किसान, मध्यम वर्ग, सभी के सपनों को पूरा करेगा. मध्यम वर्ग को सशक्त बनाने के लिए हमारी सरकार ने बीते वर्षों में अनेकों निर्णय लिए और ईज ऑफ लिविंग को सुनिश्चित किया है। हमने टैक्स रेट को कम किया है, साथ ही प्रोसेस को सिंप्लीफाई, ट्रांसपेरेंट और फास्ट किया है।
Sir, any expectation from budget, sir?
Rahul Gandhi, back in parliament after his Bharat Jodo Yatra, tweeted to say the government has no real roadmap for the future. At a press conference earlier, the Congress had hit out at the government, saying the budget showed how far the government was removed from real issues.
The FM has not mentioned the words unemployment, poverty, inequality or equity anywhere in her speech. Mercifully, she has mentioned the word poor twice in her speech.
Besides the Congress, other opposition leaders too have criticized the budget.
আজকে যে বাজেট করেছে গরিব লোকদের বিরুদ্ধে বাজেট, অ্যান্টি পিপুল বাজেটকে আমি ধিক্কার জানাই এবং ধিক্কার জানাই ওদের চিন্তাধারায়। এই বাজেটে কোনো আলো নেই, শুধু অন্ধকার।
गरीब भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारे बच्चों के लिए रोजगार के माध्यम बनाएं, गरीब भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारे हाथ में रोजगार दीजिए, हम मेहनत करके अपने पैसे कमाएंगे। हमें राशन ये हमेशा के लिए जो कोविड के कार्यकाल में शुरू हुआ जिंदगी भर के लिए नहीं चाहिए और अपनी कमियां छुपा रहे हैं।
We have seen it in the last 9 years. Wherever they announce an airport, they will only announce it in a poll-bound state. They will either announce it in a BJP government state. Forget about airports, brother. They have announced that they are going to give 10 lakh crore for the infrastructure, right? Which infrastructure are you talking about?
But the BJP called the budget a visionary one. Party President JP Nadda said it would empower the poor and the middle class.
आम बजट 2023-24 एक लोक कल्याणकारी बजट है। यह गांव, गरीब, किसानों, आदिवासियों, दलितों, पिछड़ों, शोषितों, वंचितों, आर्थिक रूप से पिछड़े तथा मध्यम वर्ग के लोगों को सशक्त और सक्षम बनाने वाला बजट है।
With Arvind Gunashekhar, Bureau Report, NDTV.
Meanwhile, the big highlight of the budget 2023 was the central government's much-awaited announcement on increasing the income tax level to, in fact, the government has changed the tax slabs in the new tax scheme, and the government has now made 7 lakh rupees per annum. If you're making that kind of a money, then it has been increased from 5 to 7 lakh. There is no income tax on that. But there is a caveat. The change is only for those who choose the new tax regime.
Not compelling anybody. Those who want to remain in old can still remain there for enough justifications that they can have. But the new one obviously is now attractive because it gives greater rebate. It also provides for a simplified and smaller slabs, lower rates of taxation, and also slabs which are nicely broken down.
This budget, the government says it's providing major income tax relief to the middle class, while making a big push for the new tax regime. So let's try and understand what this means for an ordinary salaried person.
Take a look at the difference between the old and the new tax regime. The big difference is that under the old one, there were several deductions and exemptions allowed. For instance, provident fund, insurance premiums for rents, and so on. Most of these are now not allowed in the new tax regime. The new tax regime has the topmost tax rate of 30% prescribed above a salary of 15 lakhs per annum and not 10 lakhs per annum as in the old regime.
Ministers have described today's changes to the new tax regime as a bonanza for the middle class. So let's break this down into how much extra cash this means for your wallet.
Now we show you just how much extra cash there could be in your wallet if you see it from the existing new tax regime to the one with the relief proposed for the next financial year beginning April. If you're in the 7 lakh and above income tax bracket annually, you now save 33,800 rupees annually. If you're in the 10 lakh and above income tax bracket annually, you now save 23,400 rupees. And if you're in the 50 lakh and above income tax bracket, you now save 54,600 rupees. And it's not just that. If you're in the 6 crore and above bracket annually, you now save almost 21 lakh rupees per year.
tax experts believe for those wanting to claim all benefits, perhaps the old regime will work better. But for those wanting to be free for choice as to where they should invest, the new regime may offer them the freedom to invest where they want to.
It is the default tax regime. So if I were to go and file a tax return today, it would take me to the old regime and I could opt for the new regime. So it is the other way around now. So the new regime becomes the default regime and then you can go and opt for the old regime. What a person needs to see is under the old regime where I get all the deductions, is that more favorable to me vis-a-vis the new tax regime which has the new tax slabs which are better compared to the old regime and the surcharge and standard deduction.
However, experts say each taxpayer will have to decide for themselves which is better, that is, which regime, the old or the new, will mean lesser tax, depending on things like provident fund, home loans, insurance premiums and so on. The government says the income tax relief announced today will cost around 35,000 crores in revenue foregone. But the reason it's pushing taxpayers to adopt the new regime is purely simplification, is what experts believe. Sakshi Bajaj for NDTV.
All right, with that, we are slipping into a very short break. News and updates continue on NDTV. Stay tuned.
Co-powered by
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV, only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 22 years old, but it is young at 22.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Shom, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away.
Well, the big headline for the government from this budget is that it was focused on the middle class, and that's why you saw the change in the tax slabs as well. So we at NDTV set out and went out to speak to the people who the government claims it is going to have a positive impact on.
34-year-old Rajesh Arya, a government employee in Lucknow and the only breadwinner in his family of 6, says he is relieved after today's budget announcements for the salaried class under the new tax regime. Rajesh says he may be one step closer to his dream of buying a car. He earns a salary of 5 lakh rupees a year.
देखिए हर सर्विस क्लास आदमी के कुछ ड्रीम्स होते हैं। ये सब पैसा थोड़ा बचता है जब सैलरी से, तो आदमी वेकेशन पे सोचता है अपनी फैमिली को ले जाने के लिए, कभी सोचता है गाड़ी ले लूं या फिर कुछ और अपनी जो है ख्वाहिशें हैं पूरी कर लें। इस टैक्स स्लैब के आने से थोड़ी सी एक बार सोच सकते हैं कि कुछ हमें राहत मिली है, तो हम उसको ड्रीम को अपना पूरा करने की कोशिश करेंगे।
In one of the budget announcements that stood out for the middle class, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that those earning up to 7 lakh rupees a year will not have to pay any tax under the new tax regime. This is what the new slabs look like now. While those with an annual income of 9 lakhs will have to pay 45,000 rupees as tax, down from the 60,000 rupees in the existing regime, an individual with an income of 15 lakh rupees a year will have to pay 1.5 lakh rupees as tax, down from the 1.87 lakh rupees currently.
Not compelling anybody. Those who want to remain in old can still remain there for enough justifications that they can have. But the new one obviously is now attractive because it gives greater rebate. It also provides for a simplified and smaller slabs, lower rates of taxation, and also slabs which are nicely broken down. So with all this, I think the budget, I have not gone into specifics, but I thought as an opening remark, this much will be sufficient to say this is a budget which is beautifully balanced.
Hyderabad resident Santoshi Jyotsna, who works as a teacher, looks at the budget announcements as an opportunity for middle-class families to finally save some money. Not only tax exemptions, but under the new tax regime, the salaried class also get a tax deduction of 50,000 rupees.
Yeah, so this is a great move, I feel. So it is very, convenient for the middle-class families. So where they'll not have to pay any income tax, and of course they'll get a chance to save the money. Because of the pandemic, there have been a lot of economical issues with every family. So I think this is a great move.
Amount इसमें बचेगा. I could buy SIP और जो small savings में लगा सकते हैं. You can buy small things. So it will be somehow supporting medium जो middle class लोग हैं जिनकी सैलरी 50-60 हजार रुपए मिनिमम जो हिंदुस्तान में लोगों की है, क्योंकि बहुत ज्यादा हिंदुस्तान नौकरी पेशा लोग हैं, उनके लिए बहुत बड़ा बेनिफिट है.
This budget has been called many things, from the Amritkal budget to the Saptarishi budget to an election budget. Well, it remains to be seen what the long-term economic and political ramifications of this budget are. But for now, the middle class are finally happy and looking to save. In a sense, validating what the economic advisor said yesterday about the pandemic recovery of the Indian economy being complete. With Harsha Kumari Singh in Rajasthan and Uma Sudhir in Hyderabad, with camera person Rajesh Gupta in Lucknow, Vedant for NDTV.
Meanwhile, my colleague Himanshu Shekhar spoke to the Cbd Chairman Nitin Gupta and CBIC Chairman Vivek Johri about the Budget 2023, key insights about what went on in making and presenting this budget.
2 साल पहले आपने एक नया टैक्स का एक विकल्प दिया था, पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स स्लैब का एक नया विकल्प दिया था, और आज वित्त मंत्री ने बहुत सारी घोषणाएं की है. जो टैक्स रिबेट है उसकी सीलिंग बढ़ाई है, एग्जेम्पशंस को बढ़ाया है, और सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात कि स्लैब्स को घटाया है, 5 स्लैब कर दिया है. इसके पीछे थिंकिंग क्या है, इकोनॉमिक थिंकिंग क्या है?
वित्त मंत्री ने जो आज प्रपोजल दिया है उसका मुख्य प्रयोजन यही है कि किस प्रकार से टैक्स पेयर के हाथ में पैसा रहे, टैक्स कम दिया जाए उसके द्वारा, और वो नई रिजीम में अगर शिफ्ट होता है तो उसको बेनिफिट मिले. नई रिजीम जैसे आपने कहा कि वो डिडक्शन एग्जम्पशन से उसमें नहीं है, तो सरकार का प्रयास यही है कि जो भी स्कीमें रहें, जो भी रिजीम रहे वो एग्जम्पशन डिडक्शन फ्री रहे, और इसी तरफ सरकार कार्य कर रही है. उसी कड़ी में ये प्रयास किया गया है. और क्योंकि पुरानी रिजीम जो थी, ओल्ड रिजीम जो थी, उसमें डिडक्शन एग्जम्पशन थे, परंतु नई रिजीम जब पिछली बार लाई गई थी 2 साल से, उसमें बहुत ट्रैक्शन नहीं था और टैक्स पेयर उसमें आने में झिझकता था। अब नई रिजीम को स्वीटन कर दिया गया है। अगर कोई भी टैक्स पेयर नई रिजीम में आता है तो उसको टैक्स में राहत मिलेगी ही मिलेगी। इस प्रकार की गणना करके, कैलकुलेशंस करके स्लैब्स को डिज़ाइन किया गया है और उसी प्रकार की टैक्स रेट्स को डिज़ाइन किया गया है। तो इसका बेनिफिट हर टैक्स पेयर को मिलने वाला है, चाहे वो लो इनकम ग्रुप हो या हाई इनकम ग्रुप
हो। पर 2 साल का अनुभव आपका कैसा रहा है? क्योंकि मुझे लगता है जब आपने 2020 में ये पहली बार जब इस विकल्प को आपने रखा था टैक्स पेयर के सामने, 2 साल का आपका अनुभव कैसा रहा है? मतलब कितने प्रतिशत लोग हैं जो ये पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स पे करते हैं, जिन्होंने नया जो टैक्स रिजीम है उसको चुना अभी तक 2 साल में?
देखिए, लगभग हमारे पास 7 करोड़ से अधिक करदाता हैं। उनमें से बहुत अधिक ने ये नहीं चुना और उस 7 करोड़ में से लगभग 3.5 करोड़ सैलरीड एम्प्लॉयज़ हैं। अगर मैं एज ए सैलरीड एम्प्लॉय खुद देखूं तो उसमें स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन का बेनिफिट नहीं था, जो अब नई रिजीम में दे दिया गया है। तो इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि जो भी सैलरी टैक्स पेयर है वो नई रिजीम में जाता है तो उसको बेनिफिट हो रहा है जो कि ओल्ड रिजीम में हो रहा था। तो एक ये बड़ा एक इम्पेडिमेंट था नई रिजीम में आने के लिए सैलरी टैक्स पेयर का, तो वो एक इम्पेडिमेंट रिमूव हो गया है। और अगर वो नई रिजीम में आता है स्लैब्स को वाइडन करके और टैक्सेस को रिड्यूस करके, रेट्स को रिड्यूस करके, तो उसको हर व्यक्ति को, जैसे मैंने कहा, फ़ायदा होगा। वो फ़ायदे की जो अमाउंट है वो वेरी करेगा इनकम लेवल के ऊपर, परंतु हर एक को फ़ायदा होने वाला है।
इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस के बारे में भी वित्त मंत्री ने बहुत सारी घोषणाएं की हैं और जिसकी बहुत ज़्यादा चर्चा हो रही है कि PLI स्कीम 14 सेक्टर में लॉन्च किया गया है और वो एक इंडिया को ग्लोबल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब बनाने की तैयारी है, एक्सपोर्ट्स को बूस्ट करने की तैयारी है। और उसके लिए आपने कंपोनेंट्स जो यूज़ होते हैं, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कंपोनेंट्स मोबाइल फ़ोन में या TV सेट्स में, अब उस पर कस्टम्स ड्यूटी में राहत दी गई है। इसके पीछे क्या रैशनल है, क्या अचीव करना चाहते हैं आप इससे?
इसका रैशनल उद्देश्य तो सीधा है हिमांशु जी। आइडिया ये है कि जहाँ तक हो सके जिन सेक्टर्स में वैल्यू एडिशन या मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अपने देश में हो सके वहाँ हम उसको प्रोत्साहन दें। तो चाहे आप टेलीविज़न की बात करें, उसमें ओपन सेल के कुछ कंपोनेंट्स हैं जिनको राहत दी गई है। इसी प्रकार मोबाइल फ़ोन के कुछ सब असेंबलीज़ हैं, क्योंकि मोबाइल फ़ोन्स का तो भारत में काफ़ी निर्माण हो रहा है, बहुत निर्यात भी हो रहा है अपने देश से। लेकिन धीरे धीरे हमने ये प्रयास किया है कि इसमें जो वैल्यू एडिशन है या मूलवर्धन है वो और डीपन हो, और जो सब असेंबलीज़ हैं वो भी हम लोग बनाने की क्षमता उत्पन्न कर पाएँ। तो उस आशय से हमने उनके जो सब असेंबलीज़ के पार्ट्स हैं उनको भी इस बार कस्टम ड्यूटी में छूट दी है। जैसे कि कैमरा मॉड्यूल हुआ, मोबाइल फ़ोन का एक इम्पॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट है, या कनेक्टर्स हैं, उनकी पिन्स हैं, उनके लिए कुछ केमिकल्स का प्रयोग होता है, उन सब पर भी छूट दी गई है। इसी प्रकार इंडिया की एक्सपोर्ट बास्केट अगर आप देखें, जो निर्यात हम लोग सामान करते हैं, उसमें मरीन एक्सपोर्ट्स का बहुत बड़ा भाग है। और मरीन एक्सपोर्ट्स के लिए जो एक चीज़ हमें आवश्यक होती है वो श्रिम्प फीड, वो भारत में बन सके ताकि मरीन प्रोडक्शन ज़्यादा हो और एक्सपोर्ट बढ़े। उस आशय से हमने श्रिम्प फीड के कुछ इंग्रेडिएंट्स हैं जिन पर कस्टम्स ड्यूटी की छूट दी है।
All right, that's all the time that we have in this edition. News and updates continue on NDTV. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 22 years old, but it is young at 22.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Shom, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV, only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360.
Nirmala Sitharaman presents her fifth budget. India's big middle class budget focus on the growth as well. Major changes in personal income tax slabs. Capex expenditure up by 33% to 10 lakh crores. Budget 2023 with eyes on Mission 24. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails the budget, first budget of Amrit Kal for New India. The Prime Minister also says major focus on growth, middle class and poor. Major income tax changes announced today in the budget. Annual income of 7 lakh rupees. No need to pay taxes on that. Meanwhile, the opposition hits out at the Modi government over the budget. Rahul Gandhi says this is mitrakal budget, no vision for jobs and Mangai. Mamata Banerjee and Aam Aadmi Party's Arvind Kejriwal also hit out at budget 2023. Adani FPO called off one day after it was fully subscribed. In fact, Adani FPO has been called off considering market volatility. Adani Enterprise will refund the FPO money to investors. India records biggest win in T20 cricket history by 168 runs in the final T20 against New Zealand. Shubnam Gill strikes an unbeaten 126 as India wins the series 2-1. All right, starting with an important story this evening. Adani Group has called off its follow-on public offer. In fact, the FPO has been called off a day after it was fully subscribed. The FPO was called off considering the market volatility. That's what the Adani Group has said. The Adani Enterprise is all set to refund the FPO money to investors. Let me quickly go across to my colleague Priyanshi, who is joining us with more details on this. Priyanshi, now there was in fact a lot of chatter around this FPO, and now finally the Adani Group in fact has come out and said that they are going to return the money. They are going to in fact refund the money to the investors and have also called off the FPO. What does this mean?
Absolutely, Ankit, as you mentioned that there was a lot of chatter around the FPO because it came at a time when the Hindenburg Research Group had released a report alleging serious stock manipulation in the Adani Group, which of course the Adani Group had refuted. So the FPO really came at that interesting time, and the FPO did get fully subscribed despite those allegations and despite that entire controversy. But now the follow-on public offer has been called off. Remember, this follow-on public offer was announced by the Adani Group, and in fact it was India's biggest ever at 20,000 crore rupees. And it was supposed to help the Adani Group with their debt payments and also with their expansion plans. But now that has been called off, meaning the 20,000 crore rupees that the Adani Group received from investors, from retail investors, institutional investors, all of that will now be refunded. Now, why has this really been done? The Adani Group says that we have done this to protect our investors' interests and to protect our investors from potential financial losses. They say that market volatility has been unprecedented today. In the trading session, markets have been really volatile for the past few days after, of course, that Hindenburg report came out. We saw that the markets have been volatile for the Adani stocks, and they say that because of that market volatility and the stocks performance recently, we don't want our investors to face any financial losses, and that's why we've called off the follow-on public offer. What's really a follow-on public offer for somebody who might be new to this? These are additional shares that are issued. It's different from an IPO. So if investors would have gotten these shares, and if the shares would have tanked further, then that could have led to further financial losses for the investors. So that's why the Adani Group says that it's not morally correct to go ahead with the FPO at a time when this the market volatility continues. Let's just tell you how bad the market situation was for the Adani stocks today. The Adani Enterprises stocks, the Adani Ports and Energy stocks all tanked today. The 7 stocks that were mentioned in the Hindenburg report, all of them tanked this in this trading session. As you can see on your screen, Adani Enterprises lost 26% of its value. Adani Ports lost 17%. Adani Total Gas was down 10%. Adani Green Energy was down 5.2%. Power was down 5%. So was Wilmar, and Adani Transmission was down 0.08% as well. So Adani stocks had really lost billions of their valuation for the last few trading sessions. In fact, they lost 92 billion of their valuation. So it's amid all of that market volatility that the follow-on public offer has been called off. The money will be refunded to all those who have invested.
Right, and as Priyanshi was telling us, in fact, Adani Group has said that this is not morally correct at this moment to go on with the FPO. Thank you, Priyanshi, for joining us. Just to complete disclosure as far as the Adani Group is concerned, NDTV is a subsidiary of the Adani Group. All right, now, in fact, moving on to the big budget that was presented by Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, today. As soon as the budget got over, while the government, the Prime Minister and the ministers in the union government, the Treasury benches, hailed the budget for the poor, for the middle class. They said that there is something for everyone. Meanwhile, the opposition took on the Modi government and said that this budget has done nothing as far as unemployment is concerned. And of course, with the spending cuts in Manrega, they also called it anti-poor.
माननीय वित्त मंत्री श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण.
Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presenting her 5th budget, the last full budget of the BJP government before the 2024 general elections. While the ruling party described the budget as a foundation for building a developed India, the opposition called it a budget for elections, lacking any vision.
अमृत काल का ये पहला बजट विकसित भारत के विराट संकल्प को पूरा करने के लिए एक मजबूत नींव का निर्माण करेगा. ये बजट वंचितों को वरीयता देता है. ये बजट आज की एस्पिरेशनल सोसाइटी, गांव, गरीब, किसान, मध्यम वर्ग, सभी के सपनों को पूरा करेगा. मध्यम वर्ग को सशक्त बनाने के लिए हमारी सरकार ने बीते वर्षों में अनेकों निर्णय लिए और ईज ऑफ लिविंग को सुनिश्चित किया है। हमने टैक्स रेट को कम किया है, साथ ही प्रोसेस को सिंप्लीफाई, ट्रांसपेरेंट और फास्ट किया है।
Sir, any expectations from budget, sir?
Rahul Gandhi, back in parliament after his Bharat Jodo Yatra, tweeted to say the government has no real roadmap for the future. At a press conference earlier, the Congress had hit out at the government, saying the budget showed how far the government was removed from real issues.
The FM has not mentioned the words unemployment, poverty, inequality or equity anywhere in her speech. Mercifully, she has mentioned the word poor twice in her speech.
Besides the Congress, other opposition leaders too have criticized the budget.
আজকে যে বাজেট করেছে গরিব লোকদের বিরুদ্ধে বাজেট, অ্যান্টি পিপুল বাজেটকে আমি ধিক্কার জানাই এবং ধিক্কার জানাই ওদের চিন্তাধারায়। এই বাজেটে কোনো আলো নেই, শুধু অন্ধকার।
गरीब भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारे बच्चों के लिए रोजगार के माध्यम बनाएं, गरीब भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारे हाथ में रोजगार दीजिए, हम मेहनत करके अपने पैसे कमाएंगे। हमें राशन ये हमेशा के लिए जो कोविड के कार्यकाल में शुरू हुआ जिंदगी भर के लिए नहीं चाहिए और अपनी कमियां छुपा रहे हैं।
We have seen it in the last 9 years. Wherever they announce an airport, they will only announce it in a poll-bound state. They will either announce it in a BJP government state. Forget about airports, brother. They have announced that they are going to give 10 lakh crore for the infrastructure, right? Which infrastructure are you talking about?
But the BJP called the budget a visionary one. Party President JP Nadda said it would empower the poor and the middle class.
आम बजट 2023-24 एक लोक कल्याणकारी बजट है। यह गांव, गरीब, किसानों, आदिवासियों, दलितों, पिछड़ों, शोषितों, वंचितों, आर्थिक रूप से पिछड़े तथा मध्यम वर्ग के लोगों को सशक्त और सक्षम बनाने वाला बजट है।
With Arvind Gunashekhar, Bureau Report, NDTV.
Meanwhile, the big highlight of the budget 2023 was the central government's much-awaited announcement on increasing the income tax level to, in fact, the government has changed the tax slabs in the new tax scheme, and the government has now made 7 lakh rupees per annum. If you're making that kind of a money, then it has been increased from 5 to 7 lakh. There is no income tax on that. But there is a caveat. The change is only for those who choose the new tax regime.
Not compelling anybody. Those who want to remain in old can still remain there for enough justifications that they can have. But the new one obviously is now attractive because it gives greater rebate. It also provides for a simplified and smaller slabs, lower rates of taxation, and also slabs which are nicely broken down.
This budget, the government says it's providing major income tax relief to the middle class, while making a big push for the new tax regime. So let's try and understand what this means for an ordinary salaried person. Take a look at the difference between the old and the new tax regime. The big difference is that under the old one, there were several deductions and exemptions allowed. For instance, provident fund, insurance premiums for rents, and so on. Most of these are now not allowed in the new tax regime. The new tax regime has the topmost tax rate of 30% prescribed above a salary of 15 lakhs per annum and not 10 lakhs per annum as in the old regime. Ministers have described today's changes to the new tax regime as a bonanza for the middle class. So let's break this down into how much extra cash this means for your wallet. Now we show you just how much extra cash there could be in your wallet if you see it from the existing new tax regime to the one with the relief proposed for the next financial year beginning April. If you're in the 7 lakh and above income tax bracket annually, you now save 33,800 rupees annually. If you're in the 10 lakh and above income tax bracket annually, you now save 23,400 rupees. And if you're in the 50 lakh and above income tax bracket, you now save 54,600 rupees. And it's not just that. If you're in the 6 crore and above bracket annually, you now save almost 21 lakh rupees per year. Tax experts believe for those wanting to claim all benefits, perhaps the old regime will work better. But for those wanting to be free for choice as to where they should invest, the new regime may offer them the freedom to invest where they want to.
It is the default tax regime. So if I were to go and file a tax return today, it would take me to the old regime and I could opt for the new regime. So it is the other way around now. So the new regime becomes the default regime and then you can go and opt for the old regime. What a person needs to see is under the old regime where I get all the deductions, is that more favorable to me vis-a-vis the new tax regime which has the new tax slabs which are better compared to the old regime and the surcharge and standard deduction.
However, experts say each taxpayer will have to decide for themselves which is better, that is, which regime, the old or the new, will mean lesser tax, depending on things like provident fund, home loans, insurance premiums and so on. The government says the income tax relief announced today will cost around 35,000 crores in revenue foregone. But the reason it's pushing taxpayers to adopt the new regime is purely simplification, is what experts believe. Sakshi Bajaj for NDTV.
All right, with that, we are slipping into a very short break. News and updates continue on NDTV. Stay tuned.
When it comes to making your drive legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 22 years old, but it is young at 22.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Shom, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV, only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest
Well, the big headline for the government from this budget is that it was focused on the middle class, and that's why you saw the change in the tax slabs as well. So we at NDTV set out and went out to speak to the people who the government claims it is going to have a positive impact on.
34-year-old Rajesh Arya, a government employee in Lucknow and the only breadwinner in his family of 6, says he is relieved after today's budget announcements for the salaried class under the new tax regime. Rajesh says he may be one step closer to his dream of buying a car. He earns a salary of 5 lakh rupees a year.
देखिए, हर सर्विस क्लास आदमी के कुछ ड्रीम्स होते हैं. ये सब पैसा थोड़ा बचता है जब सैलरी से, तो आदमी वेकेशन पे सोचता है अपनी फैमिली को ले जाने के लिए, कभी सोचता है गाड़ी ले लूं या फिर कुछ और अपनी जो है ख्वाहिशें हैं पूरी कर लें. इस टैक्स स्लैब के आने से थोड़ी सी एक बार सोच सकते हैं कि कुछ हमें राहत मिली है, तो हम उसको ड्रीम को अपना पूरा करने की कोशिश करेंगे.
In one of the budget announcements that stood out for the middle class, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that those earning up to 7 lakh rupees a year will not have to pay any tax under the new tax regime. This is what the new slabs look like now. While those with an annual income of 9 lakhs will have to pay 45,000 rupees as tax, down from the 60,000 rupees in the existing regime, an individual with an income of 15 lakh rupees a year will have to pay 1.5 lakh rupees as tax, down from the 1.87 lakh rupees currently.
Not compelling anybody. Those who want to remain in old can still remain there for enough justifications that they can have. But the new one obviously is now attractive because it gives greater rebate. It also provides for a simplified and smaller slabs, lower rates of taxation, and also slabs which are nicely broken down. So with all this, I think the budget, I've not gone into specifics, but I thought as an opening remark, this much will be sufficient to say this is a budget which is beautifully balanced.
Hyderabad resident Santoshi Jyotsna, who works as a teacher, looks at the budget announcements as an opportunity for middle-class families to finally save some money. Not only tax exemptions, but under the new tax regime, the salaried class also get a tax deduction of 50,000 rupees.
Yeah, so this is a great move, I feel. So it is very, convenient for the middle-class families. So where they'll not have to pay any income tax, and of course they'll get a chance to save the money. Because of the pandemic, there have been a lot of economical issues with every family. So I think this is a great move.
Amount इसमें बचेगा. I could buy SIP और जो small savings में लगा सकते हैं. You can buy small things. So it will be somehow supporting medium जो middle class लोग हैं जिनकी सैलरी 50-60 हजार रुपए मिनिमम जो हिंदुस्तान में लोगों की है, क्योंकि बहुत ज्यादा हिंदुस्तान नौकरी पेशा लोग हैं, उनके लिए बहुत बड़ा बेनिफिट है.
This budget has been called many things, from the Amritkal budget to the Saptarishi budget to an election budget. Well, it remains to be seen what the long-term economic and political ramifications of this budget are. But for now, the middle class are finally happy and looking to save. In a sense, validating what the economic advisor said yesterday about the pandemic recovery of the Indian economy being complete. With Harsha Kumari Singh in Rajasthan and Uma Sudhir in Hyderabad, with camera person Rajesh Gupta in Lucknow, Vedant for NDTV.
Meanwhile, my colleague Himanshu Shekhar spoke to the Cbd Chairman Nitin Gupta and CBIC Chairman Vivek Johri about the Budget 2023, key insights about what went on in making and presenting this budget.
2 साल पहले आपने एक नया टैक्स का एक विकल्प दिया था, पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स स्लैब का एक नया विकल्प दिया था, और आज वित्त मंत्री ने बहुत सारी घोषणाएं की हैं. जो टैक्स रिबेट है उसकी सीलिंग बढ़ाई है, एग्जेम्पशंस को बढ़ाया है, और सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात कि स्लैब्स को घटाया है, 5 स्लैब कर दिया है. इसके पीछे थिंकिंग क्या है, इकोनॉमिक थिंकिंग क्या है?
वित्त मंत्री ने जो आज प्रपोजल दिया है उसका मुख्य प्रयोजन यही है कि किस प्रकार से टैक्स पेयर के हाथ में पैसा रहे, टैक्स कम दिया जाए उसके द्वारा, और वो नई रिजीम में अगर शिफ्ट होता है तो उसको बेनिफिट मिले. नई रिजीम जैसे आपने कहा कि वो डिडक्शन एग्जम्पशन से उसमें नहीं है, तो सरकार का प्रयास यही है कि जो भी स्कीमें रहें, जो भी रिजीम रहे, वो एग्जेम्पशन डिडक्शन फ्री रहे, और इसी तरफ सरकार कार्य कर रही है। उसी कड़ी में ये प्रयास किया गया है। और चूँकि पुरानी रिजीम जो थी, ओल्ड रिजीम जो थी, उसमें डिडक्शन एग्जेम्पशन थे, परंतु नई रिजीम जब पिछली बार लाई गई थी 2 साल से, उसमें बहुत ट्रैक्शन नहीं था और टैक्स पेयर उसमें आने में झिझकता था। अब नई रिजीम को स्वीटन कर दिया गया है। अगर कोई भी टैक्स पेयर नई रिजीम में आता है तो उसको टैक्स में राहत मिलेगी ही मिलेगी। इस प्रकार की गणना करके, कैलकुलेशंस करके स्लैब्स को डिज़ाइन किया गया है और उसी प्रकार की टैक्स रेट्स को डिज़ाइन किया गया है। तो इसका बेनिफिट हर टैक्स पेयर को मिलने वाला है, चाहे वो लो इनकम ग्रुप हो या हाई इनकम ग्रुप हो।
पर 2 साल का अनुभव आपका कैसा रहा है? क्योंकि मुझे लगता है जब आपने 2020 में ये पहली बार जब इस विकल्प को आपने रखा था टैक्स पेयर के सामने, 2 साल का आपका अनुभव कैसा रहा है? मतलब कितने प्रतिशत लोग हैं जो ये पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स पे करते हैं, जिन्होंने नया जो टैक्स रेजिम है उसको चुना अभी तक 2 साल में?
देखिए, लगभग हमारे पास 7 करोड़ से अधिक करदाता हैं। उनमें से बहुत अधिक ने ये नहीं चुना, और उस 7 करोड़ में से लगभग 3.5 करोड़ सैलरीड एम्प्लॉयज़ हैं। अगर मैं एज ए सैलरीड एम्प्लॉय खुद देखूं तो उसमें स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन का बेनिफिट नहीं था, जो अब नई रिजीम में दे दिया गया है। तो इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि जो भी सैलरी टैक्स पेयर है वो नई रिजीम में जाता है तो उसको बेनिफिट हो रहा है जो कि ओल्ड रिजीम में हो रहा था। तो ये बड़ा एक इम्पेडिमेंट था नई रिजीम में आने के लिए सैलरी टैक्स पेयर का, तो वो एक इम्पेडिमेंट रिमूव हो गया है। और अगर वो नई रिजीम में आता है स्लैब्स को वाइडन करके और टैक्सेस को रिड्यूस करके, रेट्स को रिड्यूस करके, तो उसको हर व्यक्ति को, जैसे मैंने कहा, फ़ायदा होगा। वो फ़ायदे की जो अमाउंट है वो वेरी करेगा इनकम लेवल के ऊपर, परंतु हर एक को फ़ायदा होने वाला है।
इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस के बारे में भी वित्त मंत्री ने बहुत सारी घोषणाएं की हैं, और जिसकी बहुत ज़्यादा चर्चा हो रही है कि PLI स्कीम 14 सेक्टर में लॉन्च किया गया है, और वो एक इंडिया को ग्लोबल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब बनाने की तैयारी है, एक्सपोर्ट्स को बूस्ट करने की तैयारी है। और उसके लिए आपने कंपोनेंट्स जो यूज़ होते हैं, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कंपोनेंट्स मोबाइल फ़ोन में या TV सेट्स में, अब उस पर कस्टम्स ड्यूटी में राहत दी गई है। इसके पीछे क्या रैशनल है, क्या अचीव करना चाहते हैं आप इससे?
इसका रैशनल उद्देश्य तो सीधा है हिमांशु जी। आइडिया ये है कि जहाँ तक हो सके जिन सेक्टर्स में वैल्यू एडिशन या मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अपने देश में हो सके वहाँ हम उसको प्रोत्साहन दें। तो चाहे आप टेलीविज़न की बात करें, उसमें ओपन सेल के कुछ कंपोनेंट्स हैं जिनको राहत दी गई है। इसी प्रकार मोबाइल फ़ोन के कुछ सब असेंबलीज़ हैं, क्योंकि मोबाइल फ़ोन्स का तो भारत में काफ़ी निर्माण हो रहा है, बहुत निर्यात भी हो रहा है अपने देश से। लेकिन धीरे धीरे हमने ये प्रयास किया है कि इसमें जो वैल्यू एडिशन है या मूलवर्धन है वो और डीपन हो, और जो सब असेंबलीज़ हैं वो भी हम लोग बनाने की क्षमता उत्पन्न कर पाएँ। तो उस आशय से हमने उनके जो सब असेंबलीज़ के पार्ट्स हैं उनको भी इस बार कस्टम ड्यूटी में छूट दी है। जैसे कि कैमरा मॉड्यूल हुआ, मोबाइल फ़ोन का एक इम्पॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट है, या कनेक्टर्स हैं, उनकी पिन्स हैं, उनके लिए कुछ केमिकल्स का प्रयोग होता है, उन सब पर भी छूट दी गई है। इसी प्रकार इंडिया की एक्सपोर्ट बास्केट अगर आप देखें, जो निर्यात हम लोग सामान करते हैं, उसमें मरीन एक्सपोर्ट्स का बहुत बड़ा भाग है। और मरीन एक्सपोर्ट्स के लिए जो एक चीज़ हमें आवश्यक होती है वो श्रिम्प फीड, वो भारत में बन सके ताकि मरीन प्रोडक्शन ज़्यादा हो और एक्सपोर्ट बढ़े। उस आशय से हमने श्रिम्प फीड के कुछ इंग्रेडिएंट्स हैं जिन पर कस्टम्स ड्यूटी की छूट दी है।
All right, that's all the time that we have in this edition. News and updates continue on NDTV. Thank you so much for tuning in.
When it comes to making...
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope gave way to a new global threat, we were there. As our soldiers squared off against a hostile neighbor for yet another freezing winter, we were there. When brutality overwhelmed justice and a mockery was made of the rule of law, we were there. When the death of our first Chief of Defence Staff united our nation, we were there. Hope, justice, the truth. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Shom, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Cross the distance between darkness and vision. Teach a generation that has lost all hope. Treat a patient from thousands of miles away. None of this was possible
till technology stepped in and made it possible. A selection of the finest stories from across the country where technology comes with a human touch.
Unleash your dreams with Snapdragon in collaboration with NDTV, only on the NDTV network.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
Legacy is often seen as a burden of expectations. It comes with its own set of challenges. The challenge to take it forward, challenge to reimagine, challenge to be in the present, and also challenge to think about the future.
What accountability are you talking about?
As long as the core values and principles remain uncompromised. Debates are essential not just for journalism, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 22 years old, but it is young at 22.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
When a glimmer of hope
Good evening and welcome to our special 2-hour coverage of this big election budget. Is it a budget that has something for everybody? The big headlines, of course, what most people are focusing on is the major income tax changes. But is it actually the Capex expenditure which is the big story? Vishnu?
Not just Capex, this is about India's green economy, the massive outlay over there. Also, has enough been actually done to deal with education, social sector spending? Those are a couple of areas which we'll be looking at closely as well.
And of course, how the opposition has reacted to this budget ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. Is this a budget that could help the Modi government come back to power? What does it mean politically? We'll be looking at the political fallout as well. Sonia.
So let's just look first at the top headlines of what the Prime Minister has said is a Amrit Kal budget. India's big middle-class budget, the focus on growth, major changes in personal income tax slabs, Capex expenditure up by 33% to 10 lakh crores, budget 2023 to give the BJP mission 2024. The Prime Minister says this is the first budget of Amrit Kal for New India with a major focus on growth, middle class and the poor. After 4 years, changes announced in personal income tax with new slabs. The big news is that the rebate, the annual income now has gone up to 7 lakhs, up by 2 lakhs from earlier 5 lakhs. You won't have to pay income tax. The other slabs also, if it's the new tax regime, gives major relief. Rahul Gandhi back in parliament after his yatra says it's a mitrakal budget with no vision for jobs or mehengai. Mamata Banerjee, the West Bengal chief minister, and AAP also attacked the budget, saying it's got nothing for the poor and will put India in debt. Markets tank after initial euphoria. Concern over a market debenture tax. Also shares in Adani Enterprises tank a day after the FPO was fully subscribed.
And let's get straight to the big takeaways from this Big Bang budget. Priyanshi has more on the big headlines.
Well, as we've talked about, the capital expenditure that has really gotten the focus in this year's budget, and subsidies have been cut. Let's just deep delve into the basic numbers of the budget this time. The capital expenditure outlay has been hiked to 10 lakh crores, which is up by 33% from the previous year. The previous year's budget had it at 7.5 lakh crore. Now it has been hiked to 10 lakh crore. So the big focus in this year's budget clearly is on capital expenditure. That, of course, with an aim to increase jobs as well. Now, it's the highest ever capital outlay of 2.4 lakh crore for the railway sector as well. So railway is also getting a big boost. 35,000 crore rupees have been set aside for energy transition and net zero target of India by the year 2070, as climate change definitely is at the focus of the budget as well. Now, if we talk about the social sector and the welfare scheme, the allocation for Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Generation Program, or Manrega Act, that has actually been reduced, and that might be a point of concern. The allocation this year is 60,000 crore for the rural job guarantee plan. In fact, it's the lowest in all of the Modi 2.0 years. So it's the lowest since the year 2018, and it has been cut by 33% compared to the last year. So while states run out of Manrega funds, this allocation being cut might be a point of concern even more. Now, the subsidy budget, the subsidy allocation has also been cut by 28%. The subsidies for food, fuel, fertilizers have all been cut. The fertilizer subsidy has been cut by 22%. The food subsidy has been cut by 32%. Petroleum subsidy has been cut by 34% as well. So that's what the opposition has also been pointing out too, that Manrega allocation has been cut, subsidies have been cut, while Capex has been focused on. So the poor might, the allocation for the welfare schemes has been cut in certain respects. Let's also look at the total numbers of the budget. The big highlight for the middle class and for the taxpayers, for each one of us, is that there will be no tax, no income tax up to 7 lakh rupees of income under the new tax regime. And this has been done to promote the new tax regime and make more and more people to opt for the new tax regime. The income tax rebate has been increased from 5 lakh earlier. So earlier, till the income of 5 lakh, you didn't have to pay any income tax. Now that has been increased to 7 lakh. So till the income of 7 lakh, you don't have to pay any income tax. There have also been new income tax slabs that have been announced. The finance minister said that this will lead to a lot of savings for the common people to choose new tax regime over the old tax regime. But of course, there are differences of deductions as well. Now, the important point, the fiscal deficit target, that has been lowered to 5.9%. The current year's figure was 6.4%. That target had been met, and that has been reduced to 5.9% as the government aims to bring it down to 4.5% in the year 2026. This is the difference between the government's expenditure and revenue, so it reflects the borrowings. Now, let's come to disinvestment. The government has been focusing on a disinvestment push for the last few years, but the disinvestment target has not been met for the current financial year. As you can see, the target was 65,000 crore, but that has been revised to 50,000 crore. And the next year's target is lower than last year's target at 51,000 crore. Now, where is the money really going? The defense sector got the largest allocation at 5.94 lakh crore, which is up from 5.25 lakh crore in the previous year. And the education sector also got the highest ever allocation of 1.12 lakh crore, which is the highest for the education sector. Now, let's come to the announcement for the middle class. As we talked about, the income tax rebate that has been increased to 7 lakh rupees. So no tax slabs, no tax for below 7 lakhs of income. Now, there are other announcements as well. the maximum surcharge, which is essentially the tax on your income tax. Surcharge is a tax on your income tax. That has been reduced to 25% compared to 37% earlier. Earlier, it was among the highest in the world. So that has now been brought down. That's also good news. The exemption on leave encashment has also been hiked to 25 lakh rupees from 3 lakh rupees earlier. And this has also been increased with an increase in salary. So these are the major highlights of what the common people get out of this budget and how it is a relief when it comes to taxes. Big capital expenditure push, but of course welfare schemes have taken a hit in some respect.
Well, certainly some of the overall numbers of that budget quite impressive, but in fact there's been a fair amount of criticism as well. The Congress party, one among several opposition parties, pointing out that there's been an element of inequality, there's been an element of not looking out for the poor, and not enough has been done to address concerns over employment.
माननीय वित्त मंत्री श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण
Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presenting her fifth budget, the last full budget of the BJP government before the 2024 general elections. While the ruling party described the budget as a foundation for building a developed India, the opposition called it a budget for elections, lacking any vision.
अमृत काल का ये पहला बजट विकसित भारत के विराट संकल्प को पूरा करने के लिए एक मजबूत नींव का निर्माण करेगा। ये बजट वंचितों को वरीयता देता है। ये बजट आज की एस्पिरेशनल सोसाइटी, गांव, गरीब, किसान, मध्यम वर्ग सभी के सपनों को पूरा करेगा। मध्यम वर्ग को सशक्त बनाने के लिए हमारी सरकार ने बीते वर्षों में अनेकों निर्णय लिए और ईज ऑफ लिविंग को सुनिश्चित किया है। हमने टैक्स रेट को कम किया है, साथ ही प्रोसेस को सिंप्लीफाई, ट्रांसपेरेंट और फास्ट किया है।
Sir, any expectations from budget, sir?
Rahul Gandhi, back in parliament after his Bharat Jodo Yatra, tweeted to say the government has no real roadmap for the future. At a press conference earlier, the Congress had hit out at the government, saying the budget showed how far the government was removed from real issues.
That the FM has not mentioned the words unemployment, poverty, inequality or equity anywhere in her speech. Mercifully, she has mentioned the word poor twice in her speech.
Besides the Congress, other opposition leaders too have criticized the budget.
আজকে যে বাজেট করেছে গরিব লোকদের বিরুদ্ধে বাজেট, অ্যান্টি পিপুল বাজেটকে আমি ধিক্কার জানাই এবং ধিক্কার জানাই ওদের চিন্তাধারায়। এই বাজেটে কোনো আলো নেই, শুধু অন্ধকার।
गरीब भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारे बच्चों के लिए रोजगार के माध्यम बनाएं। गरीब भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारे हाथ में रोजगार दीजिए, हम मेहनत करके अपने पैसे कमाएंगे। हमें राशन ये हमेशा के लिए जो कोविड के कार्यकाल में शुरू हुआ जिंदगी भर के लिए नहीं चाहिए और अपनी कमियां छुपा रहे हैं। आप रोजगार के माध्यम नहीं बना पा रहे हैं।
We have seen it in the last 9 years. Wherever they announce an airport, they will only announce it in a poll-bound state. They will either announce it in a BJP government state. Forget about airports, brother. They have announced that they are going to give 10 lakh crore for the infrastructure. Right? Which infrastructure are you talking about? It is all excise. In the next 1 week, we will clearly know what is given to Telangana. But again, once again, I am requesting through ANI to Nirmala Sitharaman garu, please release our pending dues.
But the BJP called the budget a visionary one. Party President JP Nadda said it would empower the poor and the middle class.
अमृत काल का पहला आम बजट 2023-24 एक लोक कल्याणकारी बजट है। यह गांव, गरीब, किसानों, आदिवासियों, दलितों, पिछड़ों, शोषितों, वंचितों, आर्थिक रूप से पिछड़े तथा मध्यम वर्ग के लोगों को सशक्त और सक्षम बनाने वाला बजट है।
With Arvind Gunashekhar, Bureau Report, NDTV.
Well, we'll have a power-packed panel tonight to discuss every aspect of that budget. Joining me in studio is Dr. Punita Kumar Sinha, who's the founding partner of Pacific Paradigm, also the board member of several companies. But our first newsmaker tonight is Mr. Parmeshwaran Iyer, the CEO of Niti Aayog. That's the government's main think tank, and of course a long career in the civil services, spearheading the Swachh Bharat mission. Mr. Iyer, what's really been interesting in this budget has been the focus on the Capex expenditure, the focus on growth, and also a vision for the future. We're talking here about AI, we're talking about accelerating startups and agriculture. Do you think that's part of a larger vision that the government currently has for how they'll see India? We heard Prime Minister Modi today talking about 2047, not 2024.
Sure, Sonia. You know, this is the first time, actually, if you think of it, that a Prime Minister has articulated a vision for a developed country by 2047. And I think this budget is another building block towards that direction. There's no question that it's a budget for growth, but equally it's a budget for inclusion. If you look at the very targeted interventions for the poor, the vulnerable, the backward, the disadvantaged, rural agriculture, in many ways it's a budget for all. But let's talk a little bit about the social sector. One of the most significant features of this budget is the announcement of the PM PVTG, the Pradhan Mantri Particularly Vulnerable Tribal Group. This is a segment in the tribal population which is at the bottom of the ladder. 15,000 crores has been allocated for this mission, and this vulnerable population of about 28 to 30 lakhs scattered across the country will now get saturated with basic services to be provided to them over a period of 3 years. A very, very significant announcement. And given this government's record on implementation on the ground, we are very confident that this will be achieved. And Niti had worked with the Secretary Tribal Affairs and the Ministry to put together this package. We actually made a trip to some of the tribal areas in Orissa to study the situation on the ground. So, but apart from that, you've got the focus on the self-help groups for women, all 80 lakhs of them who will need a little bit more support for marketing and branding to increase incomes and increase livelihoods.
Yes.
Agriculture, horticulture, fisheries, a number of very targeted segments have also been promoted in this budget.
But Mr. Iyer, let me ask you this. You know, the Manrega figures, the overall outlay, it has gone up over the last 4 to 5 years. But what about inflation? I mean, the hike has not been that big that it accounts for inflation as it's gone up. So when we're talking about social inclusion, when we're talking about feeding people, giving them jobs, has enough been done when it comes to Manrega?
In fact, the allocation's been cut for Manrega.
Actually, if you look at Manrega is an employment guarantee act. So if people need the work, they will be provided work under Manrega. But the livelihoods, again, Manrega are also being used to create productive assets. So if you look at the MISTI, the proposed coastline mangrove plantation program, that again is going to be funded through, to a large measure through Manrega. So I think on the food security aspect as well, which you touched upon, Vishnu, under the NFSA now, free food grain will be provided to the same target audience. So I think on that front as well, there is no cause for concern. I mean, this government is going to make sure that food security continues to be promoted with the focus it has been getting all along over the past few years.
Mr. Iyer, Nidhi here. I just wanted to, talk about the fact that, at the moment there are these recession fears in other parts of the world, so many global headwinds, but also concerns about a K-shaped recovery in India, with the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. And we see that reflected in some of the statistics. For example, four-wheeler sales going up, but two-wheeler sales coming down to a decade low. How does the budget address some of those concerns?
Sure, Nidhi. Look, global headwinds, in fact, India has navigated them pretty successfully with 7% growth rate, the fastest growing, largest economy in the world. So, you can have a debate on, and inflation has been contained. Now, you can have a debate on whether it's K-shaped or V-shaped. The fact is that in the social sector, the social safety net is as strong as ever. I think this government, in terms of delivery of basic services over the last 8 years, whether you talk of toilets, which pretty much help women and girls, tap connections, so that women and girls don't have to walk long distance to fetch water. We have 11 crore taps already there under the Jal Jeevan mission. Bank accounts. So I think on all counts, there has been a huge thrust on social sector. So social infrastructure is as strong, if not stronger, than the physical infrastructure in which now 10 crores will be invested in terms of capital expenditure.
Right, Mr. Param Iyer, thank you so much for that. But just to ask questions on that, I'm being joined now by the former Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram. Mr. Chidambaram, we had a press conference earlier today, basically saying that tearing apart the many parts of this budget. Now, we all remember that famous dream budget, which at that time you had presented, that was called that. Do you think that it would be right to call this also a dream budget, putting aside your political hat at this moment?
I can't put aside my political hat or my economic hat or my any hat.
You could put aside your political hat,
put your hat when answering a question. Now, this budget, I've criticized it, I've issued a statement. Now, your question is it a dream budget? Now, whether you want to call it a dream budget or not is your prerogative. But I just want to point out that in that long 90-minute speech, the finance minister did not think it necessary to utter even once, the word unemployment, poverty, inequality. She uttered the word poor twice. Now, what is there in this budget for the poor? Tell me. Have indirect taxes been cut? Has GST been cut? Has the prices of petrol, diesel, fertilizer, cement, which poor middle class use, has it been cut? What is there for the poor? And remember, the Azim Premji University's research shows that as many as 5.6 crore people have fallen below the poverty line in the last 3 years, mainly thanks to the pandemic.
Right.
Now, what have you done to lift them above the poverty line?
Well, the economic survey had those figures
according
yesterday.
To the Oxfam report.
Yes.
I beg pardon?
No, I'm saying the economic survey had the figures yesterday which showed that they said that a record number of Indians had been lifted out of the poverty line. The chief economic advisor yesterday, Mr. Param Iyer, just outlining measures for the tribal, special tribal fund, measures which he said for women, self-help groups, which he said are all pro-poor.
I heard that. Now, let me invite your attention and to Mr. Parameshwaran Iyer's attention to the record of this government. I'll give you two numbers, 2022-23 budget estimates and the revised estimates. For education, they allotted 1,04,278 crore, but they will spend only 99,881 crore. On health, they allotted 86,606 crore, and they will spend only 76,351 crore, 10,000 crore less. Social welfare, they allotted 51,780 crore. They will spend only 46,502 crore. I can go down the list. There are 10, 12 items where they have not spent the money allocated at the beginning of the year. Now, why should I believe Mr. Parameshwaran Iyer that the allocation made for next year will be spent?
But Mr. Chidambaram, just on this question of employment, you said the finance minister didn't directly talk about unemployment in the budget. But when the government announces such a huge capital expenditure, increases it by 33%, the idea, I guess, would be that you pump that money into infrastructure, etc., and that in turn is what will generate investment, will generate jobs. Doesn't that give you some hope that at least they're going in the right direction?
That's correct. But look at the execution. In the current year, for capital expenditure, they allocated 7,50,246 crore, but they will end the year only spending 7,12,000 28,274 crore. Their execution is poor.
No, but Mr.
So you
Chidambaram,
suddenly bump up this allocation from 7.5 lakh crore to 10 lakh crore, an increase of almost 33%, which I welcome. But do they have the capacity to spend 10 lakh crore?
Sure.
But going by this year's experience, I doubt whether they have the capacity to execute a 10 lakh crore capital expenditure head.
All right, but Mr. Chidambaram, you know, in a sense, Param Iyer responded to a couple of those points or he spoke about those points. He said, number one, over the last 4 to 5 years, if you look at the delivery of social services, they're unprecedented. The number of toilets which have actually been made, 11 crore taps for water, bank accounts which have been opened. And yes, he did point out to Capex, and the increase over there, which would result in more jobs. So he says that it's not correct to say that social infrastructure or infrastructure which would bring people out of poverty was absent. He says, look, we've got a record of it, and he had his statistics, just as you do.
I'm not disputing that every government will add to the social infrastructure. Who started the toilet program? Our government started, and this government will add to that, and the next government will add to that. Nobody is disputing that. But the truth does not lie in the dry numbers. I took Montek Singh Ahluwalia to Tamil Nadu to show him on the ground what is the execution of the toilet program. I'm willing to take Mr. Parameshwaran Iyer also. Half the toilets are not used. You come with me, I'll take you to parts of Tamil Nadu and parts of any other state. Half the toilets are not used. They are used as storerooms. Why? One, there is no water. Number two, there is no connection to a drainage facility. And many of them have to build septic tanks, which they don't want to do. The septic tanks have to be cleared.
Right.
A toilet is fully functional only if it has water and the waste is connected to a drainage.
No,
you come with me. I'm willing to take you and Mr. Parameshwaran Iyer also.
Well, I think Mr. Parameshwaran Iyer, who, if you all remember famously, was the man who actually cleaned toilets when he was heading. He actually went and cleaned toilets as part of the Swachh Bharat mission. So I think it would be very good if Mr. Iyer and you, we'd love to accompany you on that trip. But thank you, Mr. Chidambaram, very much for joining us with your views on Nirmala Sitharaman's fifth budget. Let's first go across to what happened today at the markets, because it was a hugely volatile day of trade for the markets. Sakshi, at one time, markets went up by over 1,000 points, then down by over 1,000 points. So lots of factors there today, including market-linked debenture tax as well. And just before we go across to looking specifically at the markets, Dr. Sinha, if you could come in, your take. Now, you've heard the two sides, as they were, of the story, but there's so many other sides to it. So just as an impartial observer here, what are the big positives and negatives of this budget?
So I'll focus on a couple of things that are important to us as investors. One of them is that I think India's debt to GDP is quite low as compared to other markets. The macro stability in India is far better than we've seen anywhere else. Well, we are not growing at 7-8%. But even at 6-point-some%, we are still the fastest growing economy. And then when you contrast that to what's happening in China and all the other large EMs, India looks really good. One of the problems, of course, is that we don't have enough capacity that has been added over the years. And all the foreign companies that I speak to or am associated with, they are all looking to India to add capacity, outsource more jobs, outsource more capacity, get more sourcing from India. But our companies have not invested in that capacity expansion over the last few years. So to this, and now they're beginning to. So we are seeing private sector capex shoot up. But to the extent that the government infrastructure also keeps up pace with it, that's what we're seeing in the budget is that they are seeking to keep up with that pace. And to add to that is, we don't have enough skilled people. So even if we have all these jobs that are coming to India or that comes with our growth, and people, both people talked about unemployment, Mr. Chidambaram talked about unemployment, part of the problem is the wage, the mismatch of skills.
Right. So let me ask you this, you were talking about the GDP, you alluded to that. Now, debt as a percentage of GDP in 2015 was at 66.6%. That's gone up substantially to just under 88%. And we have high interest rates. So our debt burden, obviously in taking care of that interest, is huge. So isn't that a problem? That, you know, debt as a percentage of GDP in India is a problem?
Well, it has come down if you go back longer periods of time and compared to other economies.
It's now at 87.6%.
It was actually at
2015, it was 66.6. It's now gone up.
No, I don't know if you have. I mean, it depends on what numbers you're looking at. The numbers I looked at, that it has actually come down over a 10-year period. So I guess it's very sensitive to what time period you look at. But you're also accounting for a COVID period where all governments had to take on debt to stimulate their economies. So if you adjust for that, I think the debt to GDP actually has not gone up.
Okay.
But I think we can go across to Sakshi actually now to look at the markets, and we want to ask you about that, Dr. Sinha, as well. Very volatile day, as Sonia was saying earlier, Sakshi. The market's going up 1,000 points, then dropping 1,000 points. Also, Adani stocks taking a major hit at the markets today again. Was that primarily the reason why the Sensex tanked later?
Well, it was one of the key reasons, but that's right. It was a volatile day of trade for the markets this budget, with both benchmark indices closing mixed. While the Nifty ended the day marginally in the red, the Sensex ended the day marginally in the green. Sectorally also, it was really a mixed picture, with PSU banks and metals really being the worst hit. In stock-specific action, as you mentioned, in stock-specific action, the Adani Enterprises and Adani Port stocks dragged the Nifty lower. Now, remember, it is interesting to know that Adani Enterprises and Adani Ports are not part of the Sensex. Therefore, investors witnessed this rare instance of divergence in the two benchmark indices, the Nifty and the Sensex. And apart from this, of course, market-linked debentures really being taxed at a marginal rate also dampened sentiment, as experts believe wealth managers may now be hit hard.
Sakshi, so now let's just go across. To what Priyanshi is saying on taxes, because we just had a look at that in the headlines. But just to ask Dr. Sinha, what impact do you think? Because this really about this whole focus on the middle class, both the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister said that. How much difference do you think this will make, given that it means people migrating to a new tax regime? Do you think this will have a big impact?
I'm not a tax expert, but I think, in my view, first of all, from a market perspective, what was really worrying us was the introduction of or changes in the capital gains tax. That hasn't happened. Unfortunately, nobody's talking about that anymore. They were only talking about it going into the budget, but that hasn't happened. So there are, from a market perspective, that's a positive. That has kind of been ignored. And then the slabs have gone up, but have they kept up with inflation? I don't believe they're kept up with inflation, but it's still a good step. So I think whether it's companies or individuals, everybody is opting for different tax regimes based on their own exemptions that they can claim. So even we introduced the new corporate tax regime a couple of years ago. Not every company is shifted to that. So I don't know.
It's not something which would necessarily be the huge sop which people expected out of this budget. I mean, it really depends on case-by-case basis, right?
Correct. I think everybody's individual situation is different, and they will have to analyze it differently and decide.
I just want to go back to the bigger picture that you were talking about earlier in terms of the overall messaging from this budget. And you were talking about, let's say, how we're doing compared to China, etc. The last couple of years have also presented a big opportunity for India in terms of moving manufacturing away from China to India. And we've kind of been stuck, haven't we, when it comes to that make in India, that Atmanirbhar, and moving manufacturing here. What is Vietnam doing right, or Cambodia doing right, that we're not getting?
Well, I think, first of all, the skilled labor, lack of skilled labor is an important part of this. And I think that's why this budget has focused on a lot of skilling. And I really like that aspect of it, because that's what, when we look at corporate India, we are finding attrition levels are very high. People are not able to find people for the right job. And on the other hand, we have this huge unemployment and people not able to find jobs. But there's a big skill mismatch. So until we address the education, here in this budget, we've addressed education at multiple levels, including financial literacy, right? So I think that'll have a very long-term positive impact on things like adding capacity. The companies can't even often find a basic for infrastructure. You can't even, I hear you can't even find enough trained electricians, plumbers, and all sorts of different people in financial markets. You can't find back office accountants, etc. easily. So you have to build that backbone, and this budget is addressing that.
Yeah. So let's just look at let's just take a deep dive into the new tax regime and what it actually means. So Priyanshi, give us an explainer. So for instance, if I earn 9 lakhs a year, how much do I actually save? Because the finance minister actually broke that down during her speech. Go ahead.
Right, Sonia. So people were waiting for a tax relief for the last 4 years. There hasn't been a tax change in private individuals' taxation since the year 2018. So this is the first time in all those years, and people really wanted that because prices had been increasing. So the value of their salary was reducing. So now there's a tax relief that the private individuals have gotten. And let's just give you a comparison of how this will really save you money. Let's look at those figures, those examples that give you the exact sense of this. So there's a new tax regime. The old tax regime remains the same, but the new tax regime has increased the exemption limit from 5 lakh rupees to 7 lakh rupees. So below 7 lakh rupees, you don't have to pay any income tax at all. But above 7 lakh rupees, let's just look at how your taxation has changed. So when if you have an income of 7 lakh rupees, there's no income tax that of course you have to pay. But if you have an income of 10 lakh rupees, you have to pay 54,600 rupees under the new tax regime, and that's actually less by 23,400 rupees compared to what you had to pay in the previous tax regime. So this revision has actually saved you 23,400 rupees. If your income was 50 lakh rupees, that has saved you 54,600 rupees because you'll have to pay 12.32 lakh rupees as your income tax. If your income is 6 crore rupees, which of course is among the high tax bracket for our country, then your tax will be 2.3 crores, or you'll save 20.67 lakh under the new tax regime, under the new proposals that have been made. So this definitely comes as a relief to the normal people. And let's just understand how your income is really taxed. You asked me about that example of 9 lakh rupees income. So for a 9 lakh rupee income, it isn't a straight income tax of, let's say, 5 or 10%, but it gets taxed according to the tax slabs under the new tax regime. So 0 to 3 lakhs will not be taxed at all. Earlier, 0 to 2.5 lakhs was exempted from any tax, but now 0 to 3 lakhs has been exempted from any tax. Now 3 to 6 lakh, that portion of your income will be taxed by 5%. So 3 lakh will be taxed by 5%, which is of course 15,000. Then 6 to 9 lakh, that portion of your income will be taxed by 10% under the new tax regime. So that 10% of course is 30,000. So on your 9 lakh income, your total income tax comes to around 45,000 under the new proposals. But under the previous proposals, that figure would be 60,000 rupees. So you're actually saving 15,000 rupees of your income through this new tax regime proposals that have been made by the finance minister. So that is definitely a relief for the common people, but some even saying that the inflation impact is even more than that, but the relief was definitely much awaited and welcomed by the taxpayers.
Right, and of course there's some fine print also. There's also the good news for senior citizens, but we're going to have a newsmaker on that coming up, Nidhi.
All right, let me go across to the Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog, the government's think tank. Mr. Suman Berry is joining us now. Thank you very much, Mr. Berry, for joining us. In fact, we were talking about the change in the tax slabs because the salaried class is very excited about that, and that's what affects us the most. Is this primarily aimed at trying to encourage more and more people to go to the new tax regime? Is that what the government is hoping will eventually happen?
Well, firstly, thank you for the amount of airtime you're giving Niti Aayog on this program. That's appreciated. I believe Paramaya was with you a little earlier. Second, let me just say that these are issues that belong much more in the domain of the finance ministry than they do about Niti Aayog. I'm much better value in talking about the global economy. But still, since you've asked, I think that this is a case in point of a well-managed, transition, which is you're giving people the opportunity to stay with an old scheme if that's what suits them. You are creating incentives for them to migrate to a new scheme, which is a more modern scheme, and modern in tax policy is essentially more moderate taxation with fewer exemptions. And it's really a cafeteria approach. People can decide if they want the old exemptions and the old slabs, or so a question of who's getting excited is really a question of who has made that transition and who has not. I really have very little else to add to that.
But you were talking about the world at large, the global economy and its potential impact on India. If you look at nominal growth of GDP, right, in our country, it's expected to be, 10.5%. Now, that includes inflation. Now, therefore, what would real GDP growth in India be? And I ask this because there are international factors which might influence India, several countries going into recession, the war in Ukraine isn't ending. So that's something that's not really been looked at. We have an estimate of GDP, but what would real GDP growth be?
No, so Vishnu, the way the game is played, and you're an old hand at this, is that there is a real growth number that comes out of the economic survey, which is a range, and then there's a nominal number that is used in the budget. Okay.